What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 11 Pi Chapter 216 Conspiracy. Did you find it? In the church, Carter's old pupils glowed with blue light. In this church full of candles, they were not eye-catching, but they exuded a gloomy atmosphere. His originally stooped body was now completely straight. The whole person does not look like a rare old man who is about to be buried in the ground, but a healthy young man. In addition to the white hair and wrinkled face, both the body and the breath on his body are telling the people around him how strong he is. On his left, one step back, stood a woman wearing a white nun's costume, her head wrapped in a white turban, and her whole body exuded faint black smoke. Women can't tell their age, they may be 30 years old, they may be 20 years old, and they may be 15 or 6 years old. Very weird. She wore red high-heeled shoes on her feet, and she was wrapped in a large nun's costume, so she couldn't see her specific figure. But from the ageless, jade-smooth, dreamlike skin on his face, one can know that this woman, whether she was alive or after death, is a very beautiful woman. Although the woman was beautiful, her pupils were full of blood red, and the madness and hatred revealed inside made people's scalp numb when they saw it, and they fell into the ice cellar. But no matter how crazy she is, she can only be controlled by others, obediently doing things for his master, Carterus in front. It's really scary. Cutlass glanced at the woman, and the old friend, old colleague, Kazaru catchphrase came to mind. After learning about the news of Sorata's group in the route, they came here under the leadership of Carterus. The buildings on the island were not eroded by the years of ability users, but they were originally like this, and they were originally caused by the passage of time. Carterus was obviously very familiar with this place, and brought them into the church as soon as he arrived. And he didn't know what method he used, so he summoned the woman, female soul, on the left who, even with his strength, found it difficult to handle. The next time, he saw Carterus and this woman's horror. The front is passive waiting, this time Carterus will take the initiative. One of them controls the soul, and the other controls time. Advertisement. Carterus first pulled out a person who had been dead for many years from the long river of history, put his soul into the body of a person in CP0, and then asked the woman to extract the time of this person. Why time and not life force? Because, in this CP0 body, he saw not only the weakening of vitality, but also aging, like the corrosion of time, natural aging, rather than simple withering of the body. And it seems to be permanent. Even if that CP0 comes back, the soul in his body will disappear, but his aging body has not recovered at all. Next, they let this person integrate into the town, escape from the island by themselves, and then waited on the road that Silver Hair and the others must pass under the slight fluctuation of Carterus. Such a place is full of adventure, and there is an evil existence, and the justice shown by the silver-haired gang, as long as Capri asks, they will definitely come. Because everything CP0 said is true, even his soul is true. No one can tell. The power of time. He didn't know what kind of fruit this woman ate, but from the twisted space around her body, he felt a breath that he had never felt in his life. This breath, with the dampness of the years, the passage of time, and the power that seems to be able to corrode everything. This power is time, and the town below, together with this church, is the time cage prepared by this woman for Silver Hair and others. As long as they step here, they will be eroded by time, and without a sound, they have reached the point of weakening the enemy's strength and strengthening their own. Plus him, plus Carter's, and some soul that Carter's might control, his phantom, and what Carter said at the beginning, the ability to copy other people's abilities. Thinking of this, he sighed again in his heart. This time, I'm afraid you will really have to be buried here. Withdrawing his gaze, Kuzan looked over the gate of the church and looked at Sorata and others outside the town. The distance was far away and he could not see anything, but his observation Haki sensed it. A breath full of intelligence reflected in his heart. He knew this breath. These years, if he hadn't been suppressing him, with the size of Marine, if he wanted to capture a little girl sincerely, how could he fail to catch it? Advertisement he wanted to see on Robin, what was his old friend that he wanted to protect until death, and he also wanted to see, what happened to this little girl who escaped from the flames of war and lived in the extremely evil sea. What kind of flowers can bloom? For this flower, he waited almost 20 years. She didn't expect that she would be on the boat of Sorata's gang, and even follow them here. He didn't stop Sorata, because this was a trap prepared by others. When they stepped into the island, there was no turning back. This is a conspiracy, and it's impossible to let him in, because if that woman is allowed to come out, he doesn't know whether he can protect the safety of all the friends. He himself is not afraid, because his domain is only a part he can control, and he also has the peak armament Haki. Moreover, relying on the characteristics of thunder and lightning, as long as she is not careless, she will be invincible innately. After all, he couldn't understand it at all. Regarding the ability of time, who knows, whether that thing can pass through his space domain. I will go with you. Sorata knew, how could they not know? So when she saw that Sorata was about to attack, she also quickly opened her mouth. After eating devil fruit, she felt that even if she was not as good as those old admirals or 4 emperors, they were not something they could defeat in a short time. Can't escape, can't go. Even if this is a trap set by the other party, Sorata has to break through. Here, he is the only one who has the confidence to stop that guy whose breath is like a wick. Kuina held the handle of He Dao Yuan's knife with her right hand, and small lightning bolts burst out of her body. This made his always calm heart a little restless. It was a black solitary vulture, and it plunged headlong into this island shrouded in thick fog in the sunset. In its hoarse voice, there was a unique loneliness, just like this space and this island. Sorata's opponent must be that abyss-like figure, and her opponent is that icy figure. At this moment, the sky above the church suddenly heard the cry of a lone vulture. Although hockey is not the nemesis of devil fruit, but as long as it is cultivated to the peak, most of the fruit abilities in this world, unless they are also developed to the peak, otherwise it is impossible to penetrate the defense of armament hockey. It was also this cry, as if the horn of attack had been blown, which made the people on both sides cheer up involuntarily. You wait here, I'll go see what these guys are doing. Chapter 217 Wow, who told you that I am demon fruit power? Withdrawing her gaze from above the church, Sorata turned her head and took a deep look at Kuina. Then there was a smile on the corner of his mouth, and he opened his mouth. His white teeth shone with white light on the dark island shrouded in thick fog in the sunset. The white light is not dazzling, but it gave Kuina and everyone confidence. Okay, let's go together. Kuina's armament hockey, although he hasn't cultivated to the highest level yet, should be able to stop the weird passage of time. And she is a thunderbolt herself, so it would be very difficult for Kuzan to hurt her. Although it hasn't been long since she got the fruit, relying on Sorata's knowledge of lightning and her daily practice in Sorata's field, she is not weak anymore. Moreover, her observation hockey is the strongest, stronger than armed color. Coupled with the addition of swordsmanship, even if the overall strength cannot be Kuzan, it is not an existence that Kuzan can win with an admiral. Be careful. Finally, he glanced at the crowd behind him again, the nebula in Sorata's eyes turned, and the figure disappeared in place. Kuina, on the other hand, turned into a cyan thunderbolt, rushing towards the sky with a buzz, and disappeared in the distance in the blink of an eye. Amidst the rumbling sound, it appeared in the sky outside the church door, and stopped beside Sorata, who was floating at the side. One of them was wearing a white shirt and had been out at sea for a few months. His silver hair had grown long and was cut into pieces by him at will, and it was blowing in the wind. That pair of blue pupils seemed to replace the stars in the sky under the dense fog, exuding a unique charm, so that those who saw it couldn't help but be addicted to it. The other one is wearing a powder-coated white flower coat with a black ribbon wrapped around his waist to form a bow. His head is full of dark blue hair tied behind his head, leaving only 2 strands of hair like willow branches hanging down, on both sides of the cheeks. On the immature, but full of determination eyes shining with blue light, there is a pair of eyebrows like sharp swords. Make her whole body stand above the sky, like an invincible sword, a thunderbolt that shakes the sky but is also hot. Make people dare not look directly, it's really, a fairy couple. Kuzan looked at the handsome men and beautiful women in the sky outside the door, and couldn't find an adjective for a while, so he could only think of words that popped up in his heart to describe. Thunderfruit. Advertisement. The first thing Kuzan paid attention to was the appearance and temperament of Sorata and Kuina, who suddenly appeared. The CP0 chief behind them, Kuro, paid attention to the way Kuina appeared, and the small lightning that flashed from time to time on the other side. They have known for a long time that Sorata can hang in the air and appear suddenly, but in the previous information, there is no blue hair Kuina's ability to control thunder and lightning. It can be suspended in the air, see the way it appears, and can also be elementalized, then only the thunderfruit, known as the strongest Logia. Thinking of this, his heart couldn't help but twitch. It won't fail, will it? The blue-haired Kuina, who didn't eat devil fruit, as far as he knows, is no less powerful than the elite vice admiral, but now that he eats thunderfruit, his strength may be as good as admiral's, so here they can only be Kuzan or Carter Lai Sheng. Go and deal with it. I'm afraid they won't be able to touch anyone else. Including him. He still has this self-knowledge. The main goal of Carteris-san is silver hair, so it can only be dealt with by Kuzan. Nakater's street. A person, can you catch silver hair? Thinking of this, he glanced at the white figure in the front left, and he felt certain. Fortunately, Carteris Saint summoned this woman out of nowhere, and he felt danger from this woman. Although with his hockey, it shouldn't be fatal, but with the strangeness of a woman's soul ignoring physical attacks, it shouldn't be too difficult to take down the silver hair with Saint Catales. Besides, Saint Carter said earlier that he can copy silver hair's teleportation ability. However, what he didn't know was that at the moment, Carteris-san, whom he was thinking about in his heart, was staring at Sorata in the sky in disbelief. You are not demon fruit power. A low voice full of astonishment resounded throughout the church. Of course, it also reached the ears of Sorata and Kuina outside the church. What? Hearing Carter's voice, the people behind him glanced at him. Advertisement. Although they didn't see Carter's face, everyone could feel the violent fluctuations from his body, which made them all raise their heads and stare at Sorata in disbelief. If you want to catch Kong Tai, or even kill him, the most important thing is to limit his teleportation. Because if there is no restriction, he can leave as he wants, and in this world, no one can really catch him. This is a headache. This is the unanimous voice of everyone. Without the limit of the teleportation copied by Carter's, Sorata wants to kill them, except for Kuzan and Carter's, no one will be able to block it for a moment. Therefore, the 4 CP0 members behind Carteris, after knowing that Carteris could not copy the teleportation, their whole bodies tensed up instantly, and each clenched their fists, full of vigilance, and at the same time, they were ready to deal with the attack at any time. When Kuro's eyes glowed red, he covered his fist with the black armament hockey. The whole person is in a state of extreme tension. No one knows better than their CP0, without restrictions, how terrifying this guy is. Because not long ago, a team of their CP0 was instantly solved by this guy. The Marine knows this, the world government knows it, and of course they know it too. Moreover, they also knew that this guy disappeared for 4 months because of a guy in his team who could make food to replenish physical strength. After 4 months, since they dared to appear, they would kill him as soon as he appeared. The king of the countries that joined the world government killed the 7 warlords of the sea. That strength must have improved a lot, so that they will not be afraid of being wanted by the world government. Not afraid of their CP0's assassination. Boom! Sorata and Kuina slowly lowered their bodies and stepped on the platform on the steps of the church door. The sound of the landing was not loud, but it was like an alarm bell, making Kuro and the others even more nervous when their pupils contracted. To be honest, even in the face of the 4 emperors of New World, there is no such guy at the door, which puts a lot of psychological pressure on them. Because even if it is the 4 emperors, it doesn't mean that killing them can kill them instantly, but this guy in front of him is different, he can really kill them instantly. Well, who told you that I am demon fruit power? Sorata glanced at Kuzan first, then glanced at Kuzan and the others behind him, then looked at Carterus with an ugly face, and the white figure beside him. Chapter 218 I really want to thank you. This is the woman Capri mentioned. A strange light flashed in the blue pupils. This woman gave him a very strange feeling. The whole person seemed to be a combination of hatred, and her soul was full of madness, but at the very center and bottom of that madness, there seemed to be something different. That kind of aura that was very opposite to hatred and evil made women full of contradictions in his eyes. The red light in the eyes was even worse. Sorata ignored Carterus, and stared at the woman's blood-red eyes. Maybe for a moment, maybe for a century, finally. He seemed to see it. See, under the setting sun, there is a touch of white, a touch of red, a touch of sadness that cannot be melted away by the years, and unwillingness to God and to. Not for ordinary people, but for the monstrous hatred for the figure in front of her right. This hatred and sadness are buried in the endless madness. If it weren't for his observation hockey being too special, coupled with his spiritual power, he really wouldn't be able to perceive it. You are silver-haired. At this moment, the deep voice sounded again. Carterus quickly put away the surprise on his face, and his expression returned to his usual indifference. He looked at Sorata and said, "You little brat, you really made me wait." Oh, Sorata withdrew her gaze, turned her head to look at Carterus, with a slight smile on the corner of her mouth. "What are you waiting for me? It's not that you want to buy me a drink." Laughing, he then raised his wine gourd, raised his head and took a few sips. His whole person suddenly changed from being polite and elegant before to extremely arrogant. Ignoring Sorata's slightly mocking tone, Carterus stretched out his hand, loosened the button on his neck, stared at Sorata, his eyes fixed, and suddenly, a domineering aura burst out. The motion to make Sorata drink stopped in the air. Let the windows around the church, let the glass on the windows, shatter in an instant. That day, the lone vulture, which was neighing non-stop, stopped screaming, and fell headlong to the ground. The smoke in the sky instantly became viscous and stopped flowing. Advertisement it also made the countless souls in the town below who don't know what fears raise their heads, with a trace of panic in their eyes. Click. Red lightning, like a swimming snake, kept flashing around the church. Let everyone's waists subconsciously follow Lei Ming and bend down. Except Sorata, Kuina and Kuzan. So what if it's not devil fruit? So what if you can teleport? As long as you enter my hell space today, no matter how powerful you are, you have to be buried in it. Like a devil's moan, the majestic deep voice resounded throughout the island. At some point, in the town at the foot of the mountain, countless souls, and new souls emerging from the darkness everywhere, filled the entire town and outside the entire church. Looking down from the top, the countless souls are like a black sea, and in that black sea, there are countless red, bloodthirsty eyes shining red. That kind of madness and evil seemed to bring people to a real hell. Even the wisps of sunlight that could be seen before that day completely disappeared at this time, completely shrouding the place in darkness. Oh, yes? Just when everyone's hearts were suppressed to the extreme, a slightly mocking voice resounded through everyone's hearts, and then a same domineering aura rose up. Boom, the two auras, like two extremely powerful shockwaves, met at the door of the church and collided violently. Form a two-color semicircle, half purple-black, half red-black. Then, there was a huge roar, and thundersnakes intertwined at the collision place, and the space seemed to be broken, twisting continuously, causing the wall at the door of the church to collapse, and then under the impact, it was directly shattered, towards both sides of the collision, flowed away. Regardless of whether it was Kuina, Kuzan, or the people behind Carterus, they all retreated in the collision of conquerors. The sense of oppression that surpassed a single conqueror's even made Kulot and the others retreat to the foot of the wall behind the church until their backs were leaning against the wall, which made them feel better. At this time, advertisement from where the conquerors collided and up. The dense fog that shrouded the small island seemed to be bitten by something, revealing a huge circular pothole. When the real clouds outside were exposed, the setting sun outside was also projected in, bringing a touch of warm vitality to this hellish space. And the countless souls surrounding the church also seemed to have been impacted, like waves, rolled backwards, and returned to the town. With the setting sun behind her back, Sorata's silver hair, shining orange-yellow light, was constantly swaying backwards. The wine gourd in his right hand had been hung around his waist at some point, and his right hand had already grasped the handle of Zonkong's knife. At this moment, his whole body is filled with a sharp edge that wants to split the sky. While making people terrified, there is a sense of invincibility in his heart. Of course, this feeling only flashed in the hearts of Kulot and others deep in the church, but not in the hearts of Katras and Kuzan. But at this moment, Sorata's sharpness was too sharp, and they couldn't help being on guard. Wearing Carter's Conqueror's hockey, Sorata's eyes sparkled with purple thunder, and he said contemptuously, "You old man, I think your age should have buried half of your body in the soil. Although I don't know what kind of fruit you are, which allows you to control your soul and maintain your peak, but I think no matter how powerful you are, you can't last as long as a young man like me. So, Jung." With the sound of the sword, the purple-black space that was colliding with Carter's Conqueror's hockey retracted instantly as if summoned by something. Then they fused together to form a purple-black energy that everyone fears. Energy entangles purple-black lightning. Then, like a wandering dragon, it gradually entangled Zonkong's silver-gray blade, turning Zonkong's blade into purple-black, shining with purple thunder, and distorting the space around the blade. Conqueror's winding. Staring at Sorata, who was covered in purple thunder, and at the blade wrapped in purple thunder in Sorata's hand, no matter whether it was Kuzan or Carteris, his eyes all shrank. According to their information, although silver hair can make Conqueror's coil, it is obviously inseparable from his weird space ability, and the attack power is not as powerful as the real Conqueror's coil. But in front of, growing so fast, I really want to thank you. Sorata raised Zonkong, swung his right leg backwards, with the point of the knife facing Carteris on one side of his body, and smiled faintly. Originally, I was still thinking that I would only meet the extremely powerful Conqueror's hockey in the New World. Or, let me do the real Conqueror's entanglement, I didn't expect to meet you here. The more he said, the sharper his body became. In the end, his whole body seemed to be transformed into a sword. Behind him, there was a phantom of a cyan dragon head shining with purple thunder. Chapter 219 Fatboy Qinglong. This is a move created by him, which can burst out in an instant as if it has surpassed the speed of time, the most powerful melee slash. Originally, with his strength, he would not be able to use this kind of move at all, and this kind of move, in order to achieve the fastest speed, there is a prerequisite, that is, thunder clears the way. After Kuina ate the thunder fruit, it fits perfectly with this trick. At this time, if she used this move, even he would find it difficult to avoid it, so he could only bear it. And he, the moment he was promoted in Conqueror's hockey, realized the entanglement. The void lightning brought by Conqueror's entanglement, although not as powerful as real lightning, nor the power of Kuina Thunderfruit lightning, can allow him to use a real blue dragon. So the moment he understood it, he used it naturally. Puff, as if the space had been cut, a blue light flashed, and Sorata's figure disappeared in place, appearing directly in front of Carter's. The knife in his hand, from top to bottom, cut directly at Carter's chest. Bump, there was a shocking explosion, and the strong shockwave forced Kuzan and Kuina to squint their eyes while being pushed out of the church. The space around the church is like a windmill rotating in time and space, constantly distorting, and then the ground is like waves, centered on the collision of the two, rushing towards the surroundings. Amidst the rumbling sound, the entire church and the entire highland collapsed directly from the top of the mountain, and then the gravel and sawdust flew into the sky with the hurricane formed by the shockwave, and continued to fall towards the town below the mountain. There was a click, sky, really cracked. This time it was not a dense fog, but above the dense fog, the real sky split open. The orange-yellow real cloud is like a cracked canyon, and the cloud, like water, is constantly pouring up and down through the crack. Is it all here? Looking at the sky, Kuzan's eyes flashed with wonder, and then he looked down at the former church, which is now completely ruined on the high ground. I saw two figures, in the distorted space around them, one holding a long knife, from top to bottom, and the other holding a fist, from bottom to top, wrestling across the air. Little ghost, don't think that you can be invincible if you are entangled with conquerors. This thing, I knew it 100 years ago. Staring at Sorata's eyes, Carter's eyes turned orange-yellow at some point, the black in the pupil shrank into a dot, and there was a dark red circle around the black. It is very similar to the eyes of Ahua's transformation, but the aura revealed is more ferocious. Certainly, advertisement looking at the pupils of Carteris, Sorata suddenly found that he seemed to have returned to his previous life, back to his 120 square meter flat, and the familiar ringtone of the mobile phone was still ringing in his ears. Open your eyes, everything in the world of One Piece is like a phantom. And all of this is real. He shook his head, picked up the mobile phone on the bedside, subconsciously turned off the alarm clock, and then checked the time. Oops, we're going to be late. Shaking his drowsy head, after putting down his cell phone, he lifted off the quilt covering his body, then put on his slippers, walked out of the room, and entered the bathroom. He remembered that he seemed to be drunk last night, no wonder his face was so haggard and his head was dizzy. Looking at the one in the mirror, after being beaten by the society, he no longer saw the handsome face when he was young, he couldn't help touching the top of his head, put down his hands, and looked at the few black strands on his hands. In a daze, he couldn't help sighing. This damn life as a social animal will one day get rid of my full head of hair. Shaking his head, he picked up toothpaste and a toothbrush. Meow, at this moment, a yellow-orange cat seemed to sense that its owner was getting up, quickly twisted its fat body, walked into the toilet, then raised its head, and yelled loudly at the same fat figure as it in front of the sink. With a voice. It's like saying, "Poop shoveler, I'm hungry, why don't you hurry up and prepare breakfast for me?" Hearing this familiar voice, Li Shaokong stopped brushing his teeth immediately. Cat? Looking down at the orange pupils of the orange cat, he felt that the world around him suddenly seemed far away from him. This feeling that the whole world was cut off from him made his head feel like being hit by a car suddenly. An explosion of pain hit. Distorted, face distorted, body distorted, even the soul seems to be distorted. Who I am? I'm Li Shaokong, a programmer in his 30s who grew up in an orphanage and also a senior two-dimensional old fat boy. Do not, I'm Sorata, a peak powerhouse in the world of One Piece. I have a fiancé, a very beautiful and strong fiancé, a master, playmates who grew up together, and a team that goes out to sea. No, you are Li Shaokong, Sorata is just your dream. At this moment, a warm murmur like a mother resounded through Sorata's mind, and his tangled soul seemed to be comforted, and it was gradually falling asleep. Sorata, just when Li Shaokong came back to his senses, his head didn't hurt anymore, he thought all this was just a dream, and he was going to prepare breakfast for his big cat. An extremely familiar sound, full of concern for him, and containing the unique roar of thunder, suddenly resounded through the entire space. Advertisement. Who is it? The movement of raising the head stopped, the surrounding space also stopped, the cat under the feet also stopped, and even the air stopped. No, no, no. His eyes became brighter and brighter, and finally, the blue light in the silver mist flourished, and the pupils turned into a pale blue like the starry sky. I am Li Shaokong, and I am also Sorata. I am a time traveler, and I belong to both worlds. I remembered everything. Turning her head, looking at everything around her, a trace of reluctance flashed in Sorata's eyes. Although he lived in this place not long ago, it was his first real home in his previous life. Before saving enough money, he rented a house near the company. He wants to have a home that belongs to him. Fat boy, I don't know what will happen to you after I disappear. Here are all illusions, and outside, there are little friends, and Kuina, still waiting for him. Raising his head, looking at the gradually shattered space around him, he knew it was time for him to leave. Unconsciously, more than 10 years have passed. I'm just sad about the house, but... Since then, Fatty has become the closest cat to him in this world besides the old dean. He didn't buy a house until he had saved enough money to buy the house in full. Fat Boy was given to him by the old headmaster when he graduated from the orphanage to visit him, saying that he was afraid that he would be lonely so he could have a companion. He was afraid that if he touched it, the yellow figure in front of him would disappear in an instant. Because in his opinion, paying by installments is no less than working for a real estate company or a bank in an alternative way, so he wouldn't be so stupid. He knew that everything here was an illusion, and it was the thing he remembered most deeply. He bent down and looked at the cat that was staring at him with haughty eyes, as if he had traveled through time and space. He squatted down slowly. After all, no matter how nostalgic, no matter how reluctant, this place is just a cage made for him by other people's ability to evoke his memory. But he won't be in a hurry, after all, with his salary and bonus, he can have a lot left after a year. He reached out to touch it, but stopped halfway, paused for a moment, and retracted again. After all, a person, isn't it? Looking at the yellow-orange cat, Sorata's eyes flashed deep thoughts. Chapter 220. Wake up. One last look at Fat Boy. Li Shaokong, no, it should be Sorata now, stood up, and disappeared into this space in a burst of distortion. And after Sorata disappeared, this space also shattered like a mirror. It's just that when no one noticed, the eyes of the orange cat with contemptuous eyes seemed to move a little, and there seemed to be a human smile in the eyes. It's just that the space shattered too quickly, and no one knew whether it was a blind eye or a mistake. Even if it is true, with the disappearance of the space, the orange cat will also disappear, and no one will know, right? Outside world. Don't look at Sorata in that illusion, it seems to have passed for a long time, but in reality, only a few seconds have passed. The moment Kuina realized that Sorata's state was not right, Kuina called out to Sorata with his thunderous voice. Hope to wake up Sorata. According to Sorata, the power of thunder not only makes the sound more penetrating, but also breaks down some obscure things. And she perceived Sorata's state at the moment, as if she was entangled by something. That's why she called out Sorata's name with a thunderous voice. Well, you are the blue-haired Kuina. At this moment, beside Kuina, Kuzan's figure suddenly appeared, and he stared at the tiny lightning bolt on Kuina's body. Thunderfruit. As soon as the words fell, a monstrous chill radiated from his body to the surroundings. And he raised his right hand, his body on the right side completely turned into ice blue ice, and while braving the ultimate chill, he swung it at Kuina without hesitation. Ice cube storm pheasant's mouth. I saw the cold air in the air, forming a huge ice bird, roaring silently, and hurried towards Kuina. As the ice bird passed through the space, the surrounding water vapor was quickly frozen, forming pieces of icy blue snowflakes, which kept falling down. Red light flashed in his eyes. The sound of the knife resounded through the heavens and the earth. The words of Hidao are wrapped with blue lightning, like a prophet. The blade appears directly in front of Binganayo. Advertisement boom. Amidst the sound of barking, Kuina's body was hit by the impact of the iceberg and kept retreating. She didn't stabilize her body until she retreated tens of meters. Through the cold air radiating from Icebird's body and the power coming from the blade, Kuina knew that her power at this time would definitely not be Kuzan's opponent. Lightning shot out all over his body. He turned his body sideways and hid to the side, then held the word of Hidao in his right hand, turned the blade slightly, letting his body and the blade brush past the iceberg. Just when the icebird was about to rush over, he raised the knife again, and slashed at the icebird with a faster speed and stronger force. A blue light flashed, and the icebird stopped in place. Then it burst open and turned into ice flowers all over the sky. Kuina held a knife flower in her right hand, swung it to the right, with the point of the knife pointing down, and turned to stare at Kuzan, with ice flowers reflected in her pupils, and lightning wrapped around her body, dispelling the cold around her. Admiral. The cold, indifferent voice was conveyed in the ice flowers all over the sky. Well, don't be so serious. Kuzan breathed out a breath of cold air, stretched out his hand and yawned, looked at Kuina floating in the sky, chuckled and said, "You are thunder and I am ice. We have to decide the winner. It cannot be done in a short time, so we just fight casually and wait for them to decide the outcome." Kuina seemed to have sensed that Kuzan didn't want to fight to the death with her. She took a deep look at Kuzan, then raised the word of peace, pointing the tip of the knife at Kuzan. Her eyes were as cold as the blade in her hand, piercing through people's hearts. Being able to fight against Admiral, she will not let go of this opportunity. Even if Kuzan doesn't want to fight, she just wants to fool around, but this is not what she wants. Just when she was about to make a move, she seemed to sense something, turned her head suddenly, and looked at the two sides fighting in the ruins of the church. There was a gleam of joy in her eyes at first, and then a hint of worry. Although she knew that Sorata couldn't be injured, she was inevitably a little worried when facing Cartres's unknown ability. In the middle of the ruins of the church, Carters raised his right hand and wrestled with Sorata's blade. The left hand was swiftly smashing towards the head of Sorata, who seemed to have lost his soul. The moment Sorata fell into a hallucination, he raised his enlarged left hand. He could feel that although Sorata was still wrestling with him at this moment, it was just an instinctive reaction of his body, and his spirit had already entered an illusion. At this moment, Sorata could not escape his attack. And the left fist he raised didn't hit out immediately, but was accumulating strength, and he wanted to kill the person in front of him with one blow. As the energy on his left hand accumulated more and more, in the end, even the entire space where his left hand was located turned black. Like a black hole, the surrounding space is collapsing inward. Advertisement, okay. Can't wait. Following Kuina's shout just now, he could clearly feel that Sorata seemed to have broken free from his illusion. He didn't know why this guy didn't come out immediately, but even if he came out immediately, it would be useless. Raising his left hand, his legs became bigger, black-brown hair grew on his body, and then covered his whole body, making his whole body, from about the same height as Sorata, to 2 as tall as Sorata. And his face was also covered with black-brown hair, only his eyes, nose and mouth were exposed. Behind him, a thick black tail swayed non-stop like a whip, knocking away the stones that kept splashing up from the ground. A monstrous haki more powerful than before, with a ferocious aura, rose from his body at this time, making the surrounding air thicker, making people short of breath. Looking at that radiating all things, the tall body with the overlord breath will beat the drums in the heart and tremble with fear. Go to hell, brat. With orange-yellow pupils and bloodshot eyes, Carterus opened his mouth and roared, and punched Sorata's head with his left fist from top to bottom. At this moment, the stagnant nebula in Sorata's eyes resumed its flow, and the dull expression regained its agility. Are you awake? But so what if you wake up, you still have to die. Boom, the monstrous sound resounded through the entire sky. Caw caw caw. This is the groaning sound of the space being unable to bear this force and constantly breaking apart. Different from the sound of Whitebeard shattering the space, this sound is like the sound of bullets shooting through a mirror, with the slight sound of soldiers screaming in the click. Then there was a huge explosion, followed by a monstrous shockwave. In the rumbling, the entire highland exploded directly from the center of the battle. Stones, smoke and dust, along with the shockwave, continuously rolled back and away in all directions. From a distance, it looks like the end of the world. It's not over yet. Boom, a louder and stronger impact came from under the ground of the high ground. Then, the entire island began to shake violently, like an earthquake. And the ground under the high ground seemed to have been hit by a meteorite. In the smoke and dust, the soil on the ground was rolling like a huge wave, rushing towards the surroundings non-stop. Chapter 221 Surprise. Outside the town, everyone looked at the church in the distance with worried eyes, and they were all shocked when they saw the collision of two conquerors. Unexpectedly, there are conquerors hockey owners in the world government. But thinking about it a little, it's actually not surprising. The race of celestial dragons is the supreme existence in this world. If you want to say which race in this world is the easiest to own conquerors, it must be celestial dragons. Because they were born to be kings, and when they were born, they stood at the top of the world. Later, due to the entangled collision of Sorata and Carterus conquerors, the sky was really torn apart, so that the dim island had sunlight, and they could see the fighting figures in the distance clearly. Of course, it also allowed Robin to see that figure that he will never forget in his life. As Robin stepped back, his tone trembled. Aokiji, Marine Admiral, Aokiji Kuzan. Robin sauce, what's wrong? Adao took a puff of tobacco, squinted her eyes, glanced at Kuzan, then turned to Robin and said, isn't he just an admiral? It's not like we haven't fought before, so don't be so afraid. Okay. Stabilizing my mind, I came back to my senses. That's right, I am not alone now, but a member of the silver-haired adventure group. I am no longer the little girl who used to hide in Tibet. After Sky Island, she fell in love with the team sincerely, and believed that Sorata would protect her and the team would protect her no matter what. Thinking of this, Robin stood up straight, stretched out his hand to block the oncoming violent hurricane, and looked at Kuzan again. There was no fear, only calm and confidence. At this moment, the high ground in the distance exploded, followed by a super shockwave, and the ground shook violently, making everyone squint and bend down at the same time to prevent being blown down by the shockwave. After the impact passed, everyone's eyes were once again shrouded in smoke, making it impossible to see the specific battle in the distance. And behind the crowd, Kuro and the others, who had been playing soy sauce before, did not know where, but at some point, they blocked the way for everyone to retreat. And quickly faced the hurricane rolled up by the shockwave and rushed towards everyone. Arlo was the first to notice. He quickly turned around and pulled out the Dark Hound on his waist. When his eyes were red, armament hockey wrapped around the Dark Hound and pulled the trigger behind him without hesitation. Snapped, the translucent, glossy black bullet pierced through the air and shot straight at Kuro, who was at the front. Hockey. Advertisement. As if sensing something, when there was a bone-piercing chill between his brows, Kuro stopped quickly. A red light appeared in his eyes, and he quickly turned his head to the left. Puff, the bullet grazed his head, leaving a black light in the air, and shot behind him. He is powerful, of course he can escape. But a CP0 member behind him didn't have such good luck. They didn't know beforehand that the three of them, Ahua, were actually not what they used to be. Especially Arlo. Arlo's current hockey may not be very strong, but under this surprise, under the carelessness of this CP0. The translucent bullet glowing with black light shot straight through the CP0 behind Kuro, armament hockey hastily placed on his head. Shot straight into his brain. In fact, with his hockey level, as long as he defends with all his strength, although Arlo's bullets have strong penetrating power, it is not an easy task to penetrate. As long as there is a momentary pause, he is sure to escape. But still the same sentence, there are no ifs in this world. The moment they met, Sorata could actually solve their CP0s, so why did Sorata let them come over? Of course it's because of the three of Ahua. Even if they can't beat them, at least they can Jozan. This is also a kind of cultivation, isn't it? There is also information about the three of Ahua. CP0 does not know it all, and it is easy for CP0 to reduce its staff by surprise. It's not. Seeing the CP0 behind Kuro, the forward body suddenly froze in place, his eyeballs protruded, and he exuded an ultimate panic. He felt a fire in his head, a fire that kept expanding and was about to explode. He opened his mouth and wanted to scream, but the fire didn't give him this chance at all. What came out of his throat was not sound, but fire. With the appearance of the fire, a lot of blood and fire spewed out from his eye sockets and nose. Boom, the head ultimate swelled, and then, flames and smoke rose, and this CP0's head exploded instantly, and then the fire was like pouring magma, and instantly went down, swallowing his entire body. Advertisement. The shockwave generated by the explosion counteracted the shock coming from the front, causing the three CP0 members following Kuro to subconsciously stop their bodies, and then looked forward in horror, looking at the red eyes, wearing clothes on their upper bodies, a man with a killer haircut in a denim jacket and leather pants on his lower body. If I remember correctly, this guy is Lotus, the watchman of the Silver Hair Pirates. How long has it been? Not only became a real sniper, but also learned two-handed hockey. The most important thing is the gun in the guy's hand. Staring at the Dark Hound in Arlo's hand, the CP0s felt tingling all over their bodies. The feeling of being pointed at with a deadly weapon makes them very uncomfortable. What the hell are these monsters? Could it be that everyone in the Silver Hair Pirates is a monster? It's not a monster. How to explain it? It only took a few months. What kind of power may these guys grow to this point? As far as they know, the oldest of these guys is only 17 years old. Thinking about their own age, they couldn't help feeling like, at such an advanced age, isn't it that time has been spent on dogs? Aluo's quick action also made everyone react. Adao flicked the smoke in his hand, opened his mouth, and at the same time exhaled the smoke. His whole body expanded rapidly, and after a while, he turned into a huge cat-faced monster nearly 4 meters high. As for Awa, he tore off the tie around his neck, twisted his neck, and pushed his glasses with a clicking sound. His body also swelled rapidly, turning into a huge white rabbit about the height of Adao. Looking at the two behemoths on the left and the right, and feeling the violent aura coming from them, a trace of surprise flashed in Kuro's calm eyes. Devil fruit. But so what if he ate devil fruit? He is not comparable to the ordinary CP0 members behind him. He is the leader of CP0. Even in Marine, at least there is a backup admiral. His eyes were fierce, his legs were bent, and his right foot kicked behind him. The whole person, like an arrow off the string, rushed towards Aluo quickly. Fix the sniper first, and then the others. Staring at Aluo, Kuro's pupils were full of murderous intent. On the battlefield, the most frightening thing is not the enemy who fights against you, but the snipers who attack from a distance. They are like a lion majesty lurking in the dark. Once you are not careful, they will pounce on you, bite on your body. Then he was poisoned by them and died tragically on the battlefield. Chapter 222. Ahua's illusion. Looking at Kuro, who was coming in a hurry. Ahua and Atao left and right, their feet smashed the ground, and their bodies quickly rushed towards Kuro from both sides. And Arlo stood up, turned his head and retreated with Robin and Indigo. They are all long-range players, and keeping the enemy away is the most important means of fighting the enemy. Want to run? The remaining 3 CP0s who were following Kuro saw the 3 of Arlo backing away. They came back to their senses and quickly smoothed out the emotional fluctuations in their hearts. They are weapons cultivated by the world government. As long as they face the enemy, no matter who they are, they should keep cool. Staring at the three people of Aluo, it was the same as Kuro's choice. Instead of rushing to help Kuro, they rushed towards Aluo. On the one hand, they are very aware of the strength of Kulot, and on the other hand, of course, they want to quickly solve Arlo, the guy who gives them the most dangerous feeling. Boom, clang. The sound of fist and blade colliding sounded first. Feeling the power from the fist, Kuro smiled ferociously, staring at a Dao and a Wa with fierce eyes, and said loudly, "Is this the only power?" As he said that, the blood vessels on his arms continued to swell like a swimming snake, and the arms of his hands also swelled in a circle. "If you only have this strength, you should die early." As soon as the words fell, a powerful force passed from his fist to a Dao and Aluo. With a bang, their bodies slid back involuntarily. The two of them exerted all their strength, their feet clasped the ground tightly, and plowed a long gully on the ground, and they didn't stop until they retreated nearly 30 meters. There was no time to hesitate, and there was no words. Although they knew that none of them was an opponent of this guy in front of them, they would not be afraid of this guy. As long as this guy can't kill them in seconds, they can kill him just by using energy. Shaking their sore arms, they opened their mouths to spit out bloody phlegm. A Dao and a Wa raised their heads at the same time, bent their legs and kicked on the ground. Boom, the ground collapsed, and their bodies shot into the sky by the reaction force of the ground, reached the highest point, and then smashed directly towards Kuro. Desperately, feeling the sharpness coming from his head, Kuro raised his head, narrowed his eyes, and his pupils reflected a blood-red murderous intent. As for the radish that can supplement Ahua's physical strength, as the chief of CP0, he certainly knows that these two guys, as long as he can't make them lose their fighting power quickly, then they will consume him to death. This is not what he wants to see. So, looking at a Dao and a Wa in the sky, Kuro's eyes changed, becoming particularly ferocious, as if he had changed from a human being to a beast. Advertisement at the same time, his body swelled rapidly, and in the blink of an eye, he turned into a werewolf covered in gray fluff and walking upright. "Are you the only ones who have devil fruit?" The cold light of ultimate shone in Kuro's ice-blue pupils that had changed color. He raised his right paw, and waved vigorously at the two Aluos in the sky. Wolf Phoenix Dance. 5 huge wind blades, against the wind, quickly cut towards the two people in the air from bottom to top. Knowing that such a wind blade would not be able to hurt the two people in the sky, he then kicked his legs on the ground. With a bang, the whole person is like a cannonball, rushing upwards quickly with the wind blade. His current claws are not comparable to fists. It is impossible for a Dao and a Wa to quickly lose their combat effectiveness with a blunt blow like a fist, but as long as they are caught by his huge claws, even these two guys have carrots that can restore their physical strength. I have to die too. Carrots can only restore physical strength, but not injuries, can they? Looking at the oncoming 5 wind blades, A Wa quickly punched twice, while a Dao swung 3 knives. Such a wind blade, just like what Kuro thought, it is impossible to win the two of them. But the real killer move is after the wind blade. Between the two of Ahua, the wind blade was flying, and there was no way to rely on it. Kuro, who turned into a huge gray wolf, emerged from behind the wind blade. His eyes glowed red, and he opened his mouth full of fangs. He yelled at the two of them, and then opened his hands, wrapping them around the jet-black armament hockey. His paws shone with a dazzling cold light in the afterglow of the setting sun, and then opened his hands, facing a Dao and a Wa. His chest moved toward the middle without hesitation. If this strike is real, a Dao and the two will be seriously injured even if they don't die. After all, Kuro's hockey is not comparable to the two of them, and they can't defend even if they defend. At the critical juncture, a Wa suddenly opened his eyes wide, and his orange pupils met Kuro's cold eyes. Aren't I on the battlefield? Why back to Marie Joy? Holy Land Mary Jo, his residence. Kulot woke up from his desk, looked at the distorted sky outside the window, his eyes froze. No, it's the same ability as Carter's Saint. Ahua is not Carter's after all, although his ability is very similar to Carter's, but the two fruits, one is a phantom beast and the other is an ordinary zone, there is no comparison at all. Advertisement: there is also Carter's, it may take more than 100 years to get the fruit. After such a long time, his fruit has already awakened, and the illusion after awakening can not only make the illusion concrete, but also make the top powerhouses fall into his illusion without knowing it. With such power, I am afraid that it is impossible for Ahua to develop to that level in his life. Even if his fruit is also awakened, it is impossible to reach that point. After all, the two fruits are not comparable at all. There are no fruits of waste, only people of waste. This sentence is true to a certain extent, but most of the time, it is pure fart. How can you compare an ordinary zone fruit with a phantom beast? And of course, there's Logia. The color of knowledge, and knowledge is open to the maximum, and instantly breaks through the illusion that Ahua has set up through his eyes. Let Kuro wake up instantly, however, even if he only stayed in Ahua's illusion for a moment. But it also caused his paw, which was quickly swaying towards Ahua and the two, to pause in the air. It was this time of effort that made the two of Ahua regain their vitality and at the same time counterattacked. Looking at the sharp blade that had reached his chest and the black fist, Kuro had to stop waving his claws, and the armed color quickly returned from his hands, and put a defense on his chest. But this hastily deployed defense can block Ahua's fist, but it cannot block Ahua's sharp blade. So, puff! The sharp blade pierced directly through Kuro's chest. And Ahua's fist shook all of Kuro's internal organs. Boom! The chest was sunken, and Kuro, who was in the air, couldn't bear it anymore, opened it, and spewed out a mouthful of blood. Looking at the seriously injured Kuro, Ahua and the two of course would not miss this opportunity. On the battlefield, opportunities are fleeting and there is no hesitation. The two of them didn't take back their fists and swords, and armament hockey was placed on their feet in an instant on their bowed bodies, and then they quickly stepped on Kuro who was below him. Want me dead? While the body was falling rapidly, Kuro raised his head, his eyes were red, and his pupils were filled with bloodshot eyes. He stared at the four giant feet that were approaching rapidly, and his eyes became fierce, revealing the vicious eyes of a lone wolf. He didn't care about the feet of a Dao and his falling body. He knows he can't hide. Even if his strength is indeed stronger than the two of them, but at such a close distance, and his body is still seriously injured, even if his strength is twice as strong, it is impossible to escape. Chapter 223 Stupid Behavior. And judging from the reactions of a Dao and the other two, it was obvious that they wanted to take advantage of his serious injury to completely finish him. It's a beautiful idea. If you want me to die, then don't think about it. Abandoning the defense in front of his chest, he condensed armament hockey on the top of his hands again, and in the madness, the sharp claws that were radiating cold light once again swung at the two of a Dao. This time he didn't go to see Awa, but stared at a Dao. In fact, Ahua's ability seems to be powerful, but for those who know his ability, it is still very easy to avoid it. Sensing the fast approaching sharpness from both sides, the eyes of a Dao and the two of them flashed cruelty at the same time. Whether you can retreat or not, your feet are still down. Then let's see, are you going to let our heads move first, or we will trample you to death first? At this moment, time seems to be stretched infinitely. A Dao and a Wa, one holding the hilt of the sword, the other clenched their fists, arched their bodies, from top to bottom, pressed against Kuro's huge wolf body, and quickly shot towards the ground. And as long as it falls to the ground, those four big feet can directly crush Kulot's body with just the power that fell from the sky without anything else. And Kuro's 10 claws that were shining with cold light were like real knives, no, should be sharper than real knives. It was quickly moving towards the heads of the two of Ahua. And if this is achieved, the two of them, Awa, will also have to move their heads and die immediately. Which side will fate favor? Kulot, Awa and the two? Ha ha, destiny, of course, belongs to the handsome man who suddenly appeared next to the three of Awa and was falling down. Helplessly shook his head. From his perspective, whether it was the shockwave around him or the three falling people, they were all very slow. So, he stretched out a seemingly slow palm and pointed towards the void in front of him. Boom. There was a sudden ripple in the space. The ripple swept across the surrounding 40-meter space at an extremely fast speed. The wind, impact, smoke and dust, including the three people who were falling, were frozen in the air at the same time. This, what is this? Looking at the silver light that suddenly appeared, Kuro's consciousness quickly returned. Although his body could not move, it did not affect his sense of sight. Silver hair? Advertisement, didn't this guy fight at Carter's Street? Why did it suddenly appear here? The time was pulled back to the previous 10 seconds. When Sorata woke up from the illusion, he already knew that he couldn't escape Carter's blow. This guy's blow was too strong, causing the surrounding space to fluctuate with his power distance, and he was punched into the high ground below the church by this guy before he could spend an instant in his newly awakened spirit. However, fortunately, he is not an ordinary person. If another peak powerhouse came over, this time, even if he didn't die, he would be seriously injured. This point, he is very clear. The Conqueror's winding blow of the peak powerhouse, no one can catch it without any defense. Okay, accept him. Don't ask why, because he was invincible from the beginning. His body emits space all the time, and these spaces are infinitely superimposed on the surface of his body. It seems that he is in this world, but in fact his body has always been in a space that no one can approach. Only those he recognized could cross this endless space and truly touch him. And his usual spatial domain is actually just a spatial level that he can gradually control as his body expands. Compared with the space outside his body, the spatial level of this domain is probably just a drop in the ocean, a ray of light among thousands of stars. That's all. Therefore, as long as it is not special enough, an attack that can directly erase souls across space is the same as no attack to him. When he was conscious, he kept shrinking the space. But when he is unconscious or his body is in danger, these spaces will automatically emerge to block the attack for him. For this, Kuina knows, so in the general sense of the attack, Kuina is not worried about Sorata's safety at all. It's just that what I saw today, whether it's the church or the nun in white clothes and red shoes who is still standing at the foot of the church that has been completely shattered at the foot of the church, or the Carteress who has turned into a black tiger, all have special abilities. This is the main reason for her worried look. In the smoke and dust, Sorata did not suffer any harm. He sat at the bottom of the huge crater formed by the impact of his body, his eyes were red, and while drinking, he noticed the stupid behavior of Awa and the other two. So this had to teleport over. He kept Kulot as a sharpening stone for the three of them. Instead of letting them bet on who the fate favors. If fate favors Kulot, then these two guys will not really be able to meet God. Advertisement, how stupid. With a yell, Sorata let go of the control on Awa and the two of them. Then, he raised his hand and shook it against Kuro. I saw the surrounding space shrinking towards the center suddenly, even though Kuro had tried his best to resist the pressure around him, but the pressure seemed endless, making his body continuously press towards the center amidst a burst of mourning. Go, then crushed into a ball. Without Kulot's resistance, a cold light flashed in Sorata's eyes. The right hand. Hold it to the end. I saw more powerful pressure suddenly came from around the ball, and with a buzz, the ball was directly crushed into powder, and a cloud of white mist wrapped in powder. Let go of your hand, white smoke is rising, and the powder is drifting to the distance with the wind. With Sorata's current strength, as long as he wants to kill, Under Admiral, no matter how many people come, he will die. And they are all instant kills. That. Adao and Awa returned to their original state, exhaled a breath, looked at Sorata's eyes, and showed embarrassment at the same time. Of course, there is still a trace of fear. Really? Sorata's two consecutive questions made them both lower their heads at the same time, wishing they could find a crack in the ground and get in. Obviously, with their strength, they still can't make Sorata's eyes stop. This glance gave the three CP0s a chill, and they quickly turned their heads to look into the air. When they saw Sorata, they froze at the same time and stopped in place. New. Sorata glanced at the two, raised the wine gourd in his hand, raised his head and took a sip, and then said slowly, during the battle, it is good to maintain enthusiasm, so that you can enter the rhythm of the battle faster, but in this situation, you have to keep your composure, and if you lose your composure, you will face death. Now I know I'm sorry, I know I'm afraid. While turning their eyes, they didn't see Kuro's figure, which made them feel an ultimate fear in an instant. Thinking about it now, they could completely get out of the way, and then use the power of the radish to fight the seriously injured Kulot. Adao and the two nodded quickly, with an expression of understanding. But fortunately, Sorata just glanced at them, then turned her head to stare at Yilei and Bing who were fighting in the distance, and Cartris who was floating in the air with black wings flapping behind her. They were really impulsive just now. Then what were you doing before? Sorata withdrew her gaze, shook her head, and glanced at the three CP0s who were entangled with Arlo and the others. If it weren't for the training since childhood, they couldn't help but turn their heads and run away. Never mind. In this way, they will not be in any danger at all, and they will be able to hone their own strength well. Chapter 224 Breath of Thunder. You guys go down and deal with those three CP0s, then move back appropriately. Next, it's time to start the real battle. Sorata looked at Cartris, put down his left hand, hung the wine gourd back to his waist, and held the handle of the knife with his right hand. Then be careful. Atao and Ahua glanced at Sorata, then looked away, took a step forward, stepped down Sorata's space ladder, and fell freely downward. During the gap between the falls, the body expanded rapidly and turned into a huge orc form again. Seeing that Sorata really ignored them, the three CP0s breathed a sigh of relief, and then quickly raised it. Because without Sorata, there are more Atao and Ahua. Their strength is equivalent to the General Marine Vice Admiral. Facing the three of Aluo before, as long as they are careful of Aluo's bullets, they can still suppress them. But now, there are two more strong players who can fight against Kuro. Or, it puts them under a lot of pressure. Ignore the few people below. Without Kulo, who is stronger than Ahua and others by a large margin, it is impossible for these three CP0s to cause any danger to Ahua and others. Chuck. A blue light flashed, and Kuina's figure landed beside Sorata. She tilted her head. Just after fighting, she looked at Sorata with cold but gentle eyes. I'm fine. Turning his head, he covered Kuina's head with his left hand and rubbed it lightly. Okay. Kuina squinted her eyes, snorted out her nose, and then actively rubbed her head under Sorata's palm, feeling the familiar temperature, and her rapidly beating heart quickly calmed down. Trouble. Kuzan landed on the roof of a reasonably intact house in the middle of town. The previous attack by Carteris not only completely destroyed the high ground where the church was located, but also destroyed the entire town. Looking at Kuina's side, Sorata is exactly the same as when he first saw it, intact, even breathing has not changed. The laziness in Kuzan's eyes completely disappeared. He knew that today's battle might only start now. However, they didn't hunt the silver-haired gang, but the silver-haired gang refused to let them go. The original hunter has now become the prey, and the prey has opened its fangs, transformed into a hunter now. There was no limit, and he forcibly received the silver hair that Carteris had faced before, which would have seriously injured him. What terrifying strength will it show again? Caw caw caw. The ice kept falling from under his feet, instantly freezing the house under him, and then radiating outward, faster and faster. Advertisement. Then it spread over the huge crater formed by Sorata's fall, and instantly froze the high-temperature red-hot stones formed by the impact under the huge crater. Without stopping, the cold crossed the huge pit, continued to go outward, and finally rushed out of the town, heading towards the battlefield where Ahua and others fought. The two parties had to put down their opponents and jump into the air, so as not to be frozen by the sudden cold air. The cold air continued to flow outwards, and after freezing the island, it didn't stop. It instantly froze the sea outside, and it didn't stop until it reached the end of the line of sight. Snow. It was originally the light island of Summer Island, but suddenly it was snowing all over the sky. The whiteness of the sky and the ice on the ground made this place a world of ice and snow. Is it that scary? Sorata reached out to catch a piece of snow falling from the sky, felt the slight coldness in the palm of his hand, and the rapidly cooling air around Zhou Zheng, and was slightly taken aback. He knows that Kuzan's cold can instantly freeze tens of kilometers of the sea, but seeing this ability to completely change the weather of an island in reality still surprised him. This guy's fruit ability will not be awakened. He remembered that this guy's battle with Akainu completely changed the terrain and climate of New World Punk Hazard. This ability to permanently change the topography and climate of a place is not awakening, he can't think of what it is. But no one has ever said that Logia can still awaken, so he doesn't know whether his guess is right or not. If Logia really has fruit awakening, then that guy Kizaru, I'm afraid he wouldn't have used his full strength to fight him. Worthy of fishing admiral. But it's hard to say, even if he awakens, he can't imagine what that guy can become. Does it become light? Ultraman? Haha, just kidding. This is just seeing the sky full of wind and snow, just thinking wildly. Regardless of whether this guy is awakened or not, with Kuina Thunderfruit's ability, it really won't be possible for them to decide the winner in a short time. Even if this guy shows his full strength, he doesn't believe that this guy's armament hockey surpasses Kuina by much. As long as it is not the world's top armament hockey, it will be difficult to cause fatal damage to Kuina who ate the Thunderfruit. That's what's scary about Logia. Of course, this is to develop the fruit to a certain level, such as K-Lock Doll or Enel. If they hadn't met Luffy, who restrained them, or Sorata, who was much stronger than them, there really weren't many people in this sea who could easily hurt them. Advertisement Kuina turned to look at Kuzan, her eyes became cold again. The surroundings suddenly became quiet, and the flow of time seemed to stop, only the sound of my own heartbeat could be heard. Are you going to use all your strength? Withdrawing his left hand, looking at Kuina whose legs were slightly bent, holding the word of Hedao in his right hand, and surrounded by lightning, Sorata put a smile on his mouth. Thunder and lightning can not only accelerate objects, but also allow people to have the ultimate speed without elementalization. This is what Sorata came up with for Kuina, after possessing Thunderfruit, her unique fighting state. In his opinion, no matter whether it is Clockeater's God of the Desert or Enel's Thor, they are all stupid abilities, and they are okay against ordinary people. When they meet a strong person, they become so big, isn't it a target? And elementalization does give Kuina the speed of ultimate, but without much attack. Because of pure lightning, for the strong, even if you can attach hockey, it can be easily blocked. As if teleporting, the body crosses the distant space, and one step ahead of the voice, appearing in front of Kuzan in the distance. Logia, in order to truly defeat the enemy, the only way to do this is to remove the elementalization and become a physical entity. Then with a bang, the body tore through the air, and there was a low thunderous sound in the air, before disappearing on the spot. Akainu uses magma damage to increase the strength of his fists. And in this state, Kuina's attack speed will surpass the past when she draws her sword casually, and her attack power will truly reach the level of Admiral. That's right, it's the breath of thunder, but unlike the breathing method in Demon Slayer Blade, Kuina can stay in this high-speed state until her physical strength is exhausted. Her lightning can not only internally stimulate the cells in the body, make the cells more active to increase strength, wrap around the outside, but also can make the body reach extreme speed like an electromagnetic gun. Thunder Breath. Kizaru uses the speed of light to accelerate the power of the feet. Kuina danced wildly with blue lightning all over her body, exuding an ultimate edge. Otherwise, after elementalization, it can only bring elemental damage. And this state, whether it's flash or magma, if it appears alone, it won't do much harm to the strong. Although elemental damage is very harmful to ordinary people, it is a bit painless to the strong, especially the strong hockey. Therefore, whether it is Kizaru's Lightspeed Kick or Akainu's Dark Hound, they are actually wrapped around the body with elements. Sorata didn't bother to think of other names, so I called it. The same goes for Kuina. Concentrate on one point and reach the pinnacle. Chapter 225 The Dazzling Blood Red, so fast. Kuzan raised his head, red light flashed in his eyes. Kuina was no longer a figure, but turned into a beam of light. A beam of lightning that gave him the ultimate dangerous aura. She, Thunder's breath draw the sword and slash. In this state, everything around her seemed to slow down, so whether it was the surrounding air or Kuzan's movement of turning his head, in her eyes, it was like slow motion. This feeling made her very happy. This is the first time she has really made an all-out attack after she got the Thunderfruit, following Sorata's creation of this attack method. With excitement in her eyes, she drew the knife on Kuzan. The chirping of the sword was like the chirping of cicadas in June. You couldn't avoid it even if you wanted to, so you could only accept it passively. Along with the sound of the knife, there was a cool light of the knife. The light of the knife took a step before the sound of the knife, and instantly crossed Kuzan's body. The blade was so fast that Kuzan couldn't even make any defense. But he didn't need to defend, because the moment he felt the danger, his body naturally elementalized to avoid Kuina's slash. He will not be careless like Kizaru when facing a person who clearly feels dangerous to him. So from the very beginning, his observation hockey was never broken. Well, it's so fast. Looking down at the completely severed chest, Kuzan's eyes were filled with amazement. As expected of the strongest Logia, although the previous Kuina could also attack with lightning and was very fast, it was obviously not in the current state, which put a lot of pressure on him. He can only feel this kind of pressure from people of the same level. Okay. Before he could think about it, countless cold saber lights suddenly appeared around him. The light of the knife was like criss-crossing spider webs, cutting through the air, and then cutting across his whole body in an instant. Didn't cut it. With both feet on the ice, Kuina's eyes flickered with seriousness, and she kept scanning the surroundings. As expected of Admiral Advertisement, with her current speed, she is confident that not many people in this world can escape his slash. Looking at the ice that was cut into pieces by the knife light under the position where Kuzan was standing before, she knew that her attack was obviously dodged by this guy. Well, behind. Turning around, a blue-red cold light flashed across the air in his pupils. In his hand, Hidao's words are from bottom to top, and the back hair is the first to block in front of him. At this moment, two huge ice blue spears popped out of nowhere from the sky behind her, and on the ground, a human-shaped ice cube was rapidly emerging from the ground. The moment the upper half condensed and formed, the iceman's icy eyes fixed on Kuina. Ice cube, two thorny spears. Clang, the huge spear at close range shot directly at Kuina, but was blocked by the blade of the Japanese character in Kuina's hand. The Iceman opened his mouth and exhaled a breath of cold air. Red light appeared in his eyes. He stared at Kuina, and waved his condensed right hand forward. Frozen time capsule. A blast of ice blue cold air, in the shape of a shockwave, rushed towards Kuina. Too slow. Admiral's attack is indeed powerful, but in front of Kuina, who is in the state of thunder breath at this time, whether it is a spear or time capsule, it is a bit slow. Ding! The moment she turned around, she reached for a bag with her left hand that was about the size of a purse, and took out an ordinary coin from it. After eating the fruit, she has been hanging this bag on her body. It contains some ordinary coins and a few dark hound bullets. Popping out the coin, staring at the oncoming cold air as if it was about to freeze the space, she slashed the ice spear above her head with force with her right hand. He caught the coin with his left hand, clasped it in his hand, and flicked it out without hesitation against the cold air. Boom! The flame-red electromagnetic cannon entwined with green thunder instantly collided with the cold shockwave, and at the same time as it erupted with a shocking roar, a powerful shockwave also rolled from the center of the battle, sandwiching the shattered ice, to roll towards rushed around. The moment the coin melted and the cold disappeared. Jung. The knife rang. A phantom of a blue dragon entwined with thunder and lightning, with the light of a knife in between, instantly cut across the battleground. One sword style, Ei, Qinglong, advertisement behind the Iceman formed by Kuzan, Kuina's figure entwined with lightning emerged, and following her figure, there was a low hum that resounded throughout the battlefield. At this moment, it was as if time stood still. I saw a black line with countless cyan lightning bolts extending from where Kuina stood before to the tip of Kuzan's blade behind Kuzan. The black line seemed to cut through the space. With the buzzing sound, the space around the black line ultimately twisted, and then expanded rapidly, like ripples caused by dropping stones on a calm lake, easily cutting through the houses along the way. It extends to an area tens of meters away from the battle between the two of them. Lowering his head, looking at the bloodshot chest, Kuzan's eyes showed an unprecedented solemnity. He had seen Silverhair use this trick Qinglong before, but the speed Silverhair used was completely incomparable to Kuina at this time. The attack that countered his time capsule was enough for him to be surprised. He didn't expect the real attack to be behind. This knife was so fast that it seemed to have truly crossed time and space. If it weren't for the fact that he was really strong in fruit development, if it wasn't for his strong premonition of the crisis with his knowledge, if it wasn't for his carelessness from the beginning, this knife alone would be enough. Could seriously injure him. After all, she is only 17 years old at the moment. Under the stimulation of lightning, her body can continue to improve, and her fruit ability can also be improved, but Kuzan has already reached the peak. In fact, her strength at this time, although her speed has surpassed Kuzan by a large margin, but whether it is physical fitness, hockey, or fruit development, she is lower than Kuzan, so if they really fight to the death, it is a death fight that cannot be retreated. It must be her who is defeated in the end. Kuina straightened her body and sheathed the knife. It's amazing. The upper body of the Iceman slid backwards and fell to the ice floor with a bang. This made her believe that her future, not to mention surpassing Kuzan, but at least at the same level as his. Although Kuzan was only slightly injured, it did not affect his combat power, but don't forget, Kuzan is a Logia-capable user who is hard to get injured, but Marine, the strongest combat power of the world's largest military organization, won. This is an old friend's catchphrase that he used many times after meeting the silver-haired Sorata and blue-haired Kuina today. She was already very satisfied to cut a wound on this guy's body unexpectedly. But it doesn't matter, she is still young, she has Sorata's imaginative brain, and she has Sorata's omnipotent domain. Turning her head, looking at the severed Iceman in front of her, looking at the blood streaks shining dazzlingly on the incision in the afterglow of the setting sun, a look of satisfaction appeared in Kuina's eyes. And, this time will not be too far away. Being able to actually cut Admiral, it proves that her strength at this time has completely reached the level of Admiral. However, unlike old friends who always said this in a mocking tone, he was surprised. Ding, because of Ahua's radishes, she can't keep up with her now. Like the Iceman, the dilapidated houses around him were completely reduced to ruins amidst a burst of rumble. At this moment, the surrounding space suddenly began to flow. Chapter 226 Monster. Looking at the place where Kuina and Kuzan fought, Sorata smiled. Although the battle between them seemed to be very long, in fact, it only took a few seconds. Being able to hurt Kuzan, it seems that Xiao Nizi has really reached this level. Kuina's combat awareness has always been very strong, since she has been fighting and getting stronger since she went to sea, you can know it. In the past few months, her growth has been earth-shaking. On the one hand, it is all kinds of tricks that Sorata gave her, and on the other hand, it is inseparable from her own efforts. Of course, the main reason is talent. Kuina's physical talent may not be comparable to that of a real monster, but her understanding is indeed at the level of a genius. Now with Thunderfruit's thunder and lightning body training, she can break the original body shackles, and truly have the qualifications to reach the peak. Thinking of this, he couldn't help opening his mouth and laughing loudly. Then the laughter disappeared, and he turned his head, looking at Carterus who had been standing in the sky, as if he had been waiting for him to pass, with a trace of doubt in his eyes. What is this guy doing? Could it be that this guy's time-absorbing soul can't move at all, or else this guy wouldn't be standing there waiting for him to pass by? Or knew that he couldn't be restricted, so he just gave up on himself? No matter what it is, this old guy, he won't let this guy go today. This guy is too dangerous. He could actually become a person he couldn't sense at all. What if he came to their ship and approached his partner? Based on his and Kuina's knowledgeable perception of danger, nothing could happen. But other people don't have this danger sensitivity. Therefore, even if it is a waste, he has to let this guy be buried here completely, and he does not allow anyone to hurt his partner. Legs bent. With a sound of touch, his body rushed towards Carterus like a cannonball. Stamping in the air while rushing, his body became faster and faster amidst the bang-bang sound, and then disappeared directly into the air, appearing behind Carterus in an instant. Jung. The sound of the knife resounded throughout the world, and the blade shone with a purple-black cold light, and it passed behind Carterus without hesitation. After the knife light cut across Carter's body, it did not stop, from top to bottom, and slashed obliquely on the ground below. With a pop, the ground was like tofu, and a long, narrow, dark crack split open in an instant. Advertisement. Looking at the sky again, I saw Carter's body that had been cut by Sorata, like a phantom, distorted and disappeared in place. Shadow. Soul. A red light appeared in Sorata's eyes, and she swiped left and right. Behind. Turning around suddenly, the knife moved with him, the cold light pierced the sky, and the knife slashed on a black shadow. I saw the cut black shadow behind him, revealing the face of Carterus in a twist. The old guy exuded a substantive cold aura all over his body, as if he had walked out of the underworld, without substance, as if he had melted into his soul. While twisting, his blood-red eyes showed a touch of madness, staring at Sorata, and the illusion descended. No matter how cautious Sorata was, she was dazzled by this guy's illusion, causing her body to pause slightly. It was just this pause, Carterus seized the opportunity, his severed body healed in an instant, and then he opened his hands, as if embracing a lover, and quickly embraced Sorata into his arms. Caught you. Hey, a low, gloomy voice came from his mouth. The moment he woke up, Sorata felt a force capable of corrupting all things, along Carteres's arm holding him, and was quickly approaching his body. But Sorata wasn't flustered at all, and was even a little funny. This guy sees that physical attacks are useless to me. Is he going to use his abilities to attack me? He said, why does this guy not use that woman's ability all the time? It turns out that he can absorb the woman's soul, integrate with himself, and then use the woman's fruit ability. But what about mastering the time? If you can't get in touch with him, no matter how powerful your ability is, it will be completely useless to him. Okay, at this moment, Carterus also discovered that things did not develop as he expected. You guy, what kind of ability is this? He stared at Sorata, his inner distance fluctuating, and his eyes slowly widened. Not only can I take the blow of my full Conqueror's entanglement, but now that I have caught it, how can I ignore my time-absorbing power? Advertisement. As soon as the words fell, he quickly let go of his hand, took a few steps back, and looked at Sorata with disbelief. How could this world have such a pervert ability? This guy is not demon fruit power. He knew this from the moment this guy stepped into the trap he set. It's not the ability of devil fruit, it's a special race, just like the Lunaria, who originally lived in the Red Line and are now basically extinct. This family can control the fire. But whether it is the world government or the celestial dragons, they have never seen a race that can control space. If there really was such a powerful race in history, it is impossible for them not to know about it, and judging from the strength shown by the silver hair, if it really existed, it is impossible for their race to simply exterminate until only silver hair is left bar. It's so frustrating. What the hell is this monster? However, due to time constraints, he didn't think much about it, but what happened next left him completely stunned. But after this guy quickly broke free from the illusion he set up, and took his full blow without any defense, his confidence was shaken. Not only can physical attacks not hurt, but now even special abilities can't hurt. This guy in front of him has lied to everyone in this world. This guy is not some shit space demon fruit power at all. This guy is basically invincible, not to mention him, even if it is world government plus marine, everyone is here, it is useless to this guy. Tilting his head, he glanced at Carterus contemptuously, and Sorata smiled faintly. Looking at the silver hair, Carterus fell silent, without any arrogance. He couldn't break through the layer of space on the surface of this guy's body at all. You haven't felt it already? Turning his eyes, he looked at CP0 who was being crushed and beaten by Awa and others in the distance, and would die at any time. He didn't stop, and then looked at Kuzan, who was fighting Kuina inseparably. He knew that their mission this time, it has completely failed here. Before seeing silver hair, Even after knowing that Silverhair's ability cannot be replicated, he was confident that even if this guy could teleport, he could defeat and kill Silverhair. How does this make him fight? He found that where he was in contact with the Silverhair, there was a layer of Tianya that was completely invisible to the naked eye, as if there was a layer of Tianya close by. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't really touch the Silverhair body. It's a monster that he doesn't know what ability he has at all. Ha ha. Presumably this is the thing that blocked his full blow. The moment he grabbed the Silverhair just now, he already felt something was wrong. It didn't feel like he was grasping the human body, the touch was wrong, and there was no trace of temperature, but it was like being caught in the air. Chapter 227 Even if Jesus comes, I can't save you, I said. Withdrawing his gaze and looking at Sorata again, Carterus spoke to Sorata in an equal tone for the first time. Silverhair, right? My lord, Sorata, you can call me Mr. Sorata. Sorata waved his hand. A trace of disgust flashed across his face. You guys gave me the title of Silverhair. To be honest, I don't like it very much. If it wasn't for the trouble, I really want to go to Naval Headquarters and ask you to change it to something less perfunctory. Title. Carterus was speechless, and then said, Mr. Sorata, with your strength, our world government and Marine don't want to be your enemy, and I don't want to be disturbed by Marine either. Speaking of this, the space around him fluctuated like water waves, and phantoms of strong men emerged from behind him non-stop. Among them are Garp, Sengoku, Jeffa, the former Marine Marshal Kong Kong, and even Golden Lion, and many more figures he doesn't know but exude a powerful aura. How about we get here today? I guarantee that as soon as I leave here, the world government will immediately revoke the bounty offered to you, so that you can truly sail freely on the sea. Even though he said so, he didn't unlock the ability, nor did he disintegrate with the soul that mastered the time ability. Instead, he used the phantom to concretize and summon the person he thought was strong. Although these phantoms of the strong cannot be compared with the phantoms themselves, they are not something ordinary people can deal with. The fruit of this guy is awakened. Without the peak hockey, even these illusions can defeat most of the strong in this world. It's easy to explain that he doesn't have the ability to unlock. They're enemies now. He is afraid that the moment he unlocks the ability, the guy in front of him will rush up to fight him. That's not what he wants to see. Now his real body is hidden in the illusory world. In reality, he is just an afterimage, a ghost, so he is not afraid of this guy at all. But if this guy doesn't let him go, then he won't be able to go either, because wherever his external phantom appears, that's where his illusory world is, and he can't move at all. And whether it's by boat or flight, he has to release his ability to leave. He wanted to leave, not because he was afraid of death, let alone the guy in front of him, but because he wanted to bring back the silver-haired information, to Mary Jo, the Holy Land, and bring them the celestial dragons, the real king, the real ruler of the world, the supreme master I am. He is the only one of the celestial dragons, other than the 5 elders, who actually knows the existence of EYM and has seen EYM. Although he only saw it once, the experience of that time was like engraved into his soul, and he would never forget it for the rest of his life. He still remembered that when he met Lord I Am, he was only in his 40s, and he was at the peak of his life in terms of strength and physical vitality. But he is so powerful, when facing Mr. I Am, he can't think of any rivalry at all, and he can't even straighten his back. Advertisement. The sense of oppression that penetrated into the soul was the most powerful person he had ever seen in his life. That feeling is like a mortal seeing a god. My heart is full of awe, and I can't produce other emotions. When he thought about it, in this world, if there was anyone who could kill the silver-haired guy in front of him, only Master I Am. You want to go? You want me to let you go? Sorata looked at Carterus in surprise. These guys are celestial dragons. Okay, Carterus nodded. I think you can feel my current state. You can't kill me, and I can't defeat you. It's a waste of time for us to do this, or just forget it, and I will withdraw when I go back. I got your reward, how about it? After he finished speaking, he looked at Sorata, with a hint of anticipation in the depths of his eyes. He really didn't want to fight with the guy in front of him, no matter if it was physical attack or ability attack, it was completely useless, so it was a mess. And when he goes back, he won't revoke this guy's reward, all this is just to paralyze this guy. As long as Lord I Am takes action, this guy won't live long. Although he can't break the space outside this guy's body, he believes that Mr. I Am will be able to break it. After all, Lord I Am is a real god in his heart, and this guy is just a bigger ant in front of God. Although I don't know why Lord I Am doesn't come out to clean up those big pirates at sea, but I think he will be interested in Silverhair. After all, the ability of Silverhair has never appeared in the history of this world. If it is captured back, Vegapunk can extract the blood factor and copy this ability. Thinking of this, a wave of excitement arose in his heart. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that he had to go back as soon as possible. As long as the world government has the ability of this guy in front of it, it will be able to truly rule the world, and no one or any force will be able to oppose the world government. Advertisement. Then their celestial dragons will not be false creators by then, but the supreme existence in the true sense of this world. Especially their clan, as the ones who brought back this news, when the time comes to capture Sorata and really copy this guy's ability, then their clan will be the supreme leader of the entire celestial dragons except I Am. What are you excited about? Sorata looked at the excitement that Carterus was about to overflow, with a strange look on his face. No. Nothing. You be asterisk 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 D. You really don't know what to do. Do you really think you're going to eat me? Carterus immediately put away the excess emotions in his heart, looked up at Sorata, and said with a smile, "How do you think about it?" Looking at Sorata, Carterus wanted to pretend not to care, but his body that couldn't help but lean forward a little betrayed him. Without keeping Carterus waiting, Sorata made a decision. After drinking, Sorata seemed to think of something, the corners of his mouth got bigger and bigger, and finally he laughed out loud. Ha 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 ha. Carter's mood of anticipation subsided, and a large amount of black smoke suddenly rose from his body, and his whole person suddenly turned into a demon, full of tyrannical aura. Okay, of course, rubbing his chin, Sorata had a pensive look on his face. How about it? Suddenly, the laughter stopped abruptly, and Sorata looked down at Carterus with an extremely mocking and arrogant tone. Who do you think you are? I'm going to eat you today, even if Jesus comes, I can't save you, as I said. Kill me? Sorata took a deep look at Carterus, then passed his left hand around his waist, raised the wine gourd, raised his head and took a big sip, then looked down at Carterus, and said in a serious tone with a hint of indifference and arrogance. Come when you want, leave when you want, what do you think I am? So, I've decided, it's better to kill you here. How about it? I've thought about it. Chapter 228, Illusionary Space. Have nothing to say. Although I don't know who the Jesus in Sorata's mouth is, the mocking and arrogant tone will not be false. Obviously Sorata was not joking with him, so all his previous plans fell through. His eyes were bloodshot, and Carterus stared at Sorata firmly, with murderous intent coming out of his body. Then, like a phantom, the figure swayed and appeared directly in front of Sorata. The phantoms of the powerhouses around them also came to life immediately, and quickly rushed towards Sorata with their best fighting methods. Looking at it from a distance, Sorata's figure at this time is like a flatboat in the sea, instantly submerged in the attack of the crowd. But, puff, the purple-black knife light flashed, and the surrounding phantoms immediately stopped in place. As the knife light disappeared, the phantoms also disappeared, and Sorata appeared inside, standing on the void and holding the knife in his right hand, drinking with his head up. Is this the strength? Putting down the wine gourd, red light flashed in his eyes. Sorata tilted his head and looked at the void not far to the left, and laughed. Stop doing these useless little tricks, although these illusions are very strong, but for people of our level, you won't be so stupid as to think how much energy these things can consume me. Don't be so arrogant, brat. At this moment, a deep and cold voice sounded, and as the sound appeared, it was a circular space. The space expanded instantly, enveloping Sorata in an instant. Interesting. As if traveling through time, Sorata found that he appeared in a town he didn't know at all, and suddenly there were countless auras around him. These people and this town seemed to exist, and even the sun appeared on that day. You must know that the sky is full of sunset outside now. This level of illusion, plus. Turning his head and looking around, there are countless people who look like normal people. If you only see it with the naked eye, or if you just perceive it with ordinary knowledge, these people are all real. But all of this, under his special knowledge and spiritual perception, there is nothing to hide. These people are all souls. And his body, looking at the ground under his feet, a trace of shock flashed in his eyes. He could feel that he had indeed come into an illusory world, not an illusion, but a real body entered. This guy's awakened hallucination ability affected reality, affected his vision, hearing, and nerves, which made him come to this illusory world. It can actually visualize a space, a town, and an island. Advertisement. It's terrible. But it's useless to him. The strength of the space here is less interesting than his domain. He can go out anytime he wants. And with the variety of abilities this guy has shown since meeting him, if he hadn't met him and went to New World, he might have been able to destroy one of the 4 emperors. From this point of view, his level of danger in the world government was actually higher than that of the 4 emperors. Is it because of his teleportation ability? And when we first met, this guy not only seemed to know at a glance that he is not a devil fruit ability, but after knowing that he is not a fruit ability user, he was very surprised and his face was ugly. Even Kuzan and CP0 seemed to be surprised. Can this guy also copy the abilities of other demon fruit powers? Only with this explanation can the world government send him. Otherwise, no matter who is here, he has teleportation, and he is invincible innately. If he comes to trouble him, isn't he asking for trouble? Phantom Beast. It's amazing. If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have allowed Ahua and others to eat devil fruit so early. Ahua and Aluo are fine. Their fruits have strong special abilities, but the illusion created by a Tao's fruit is far worse than this guy in front of me. Ability, that is simply a world of difference. And this guy's fruit also seems to be of the cat family. It looks like it should be a tiger, and a Tao's is just a cat. It fits so well. I just don't know if his space domain has expanded again. Can he forcibly extract the power of devil fruit from a person's body? If he can, then directly replace a Tao with this guy's fruit. Before completely defeating Carterus, Sorata was already thinking about the spoils after defeating this guy. Except for Indigo and him, all of them have demon fruit power on board. Indigo has long said that he won't eat devil fruit, not even Logia. He didn't say why at this point, and Sorata didn't ask. Of course, if it's op fruit, that's another story. No doctor can resist the temptation of op fruit. He respects the choices of his partners, and it's okay not to eat devil fruit. After all, it's impossible for everyone on the boat to eat devil fruit, and then they all turn into landlubbers. He is the captain, not the nanny, so it is impossible for him to keep an eye on his companions all the time. It would be nice to have one more person who can swim. Brother, do you want to see my kelp, which is unique to Dongdong Island? At this moment, an old man with a kind face and old eyes came out from a nearby stall. Advertisement. The old man was wearing a simple t-shirt, holding a cattail fan in his hand, and was fanning it slowly. His thinning hair was fluttering in the wind. Looking at the old man, Sorata's eyes were bright red, and his eyes were fixed on the old man's eyes. Then the color of knowledge and knowledge took him as the center, radiated to the surroundings, and expanded to this town in an instant. He felt the same sadness and resentment as the woman in white in the depths of the old man's eyes. And he felt all the souls in this town, the emotion deep in their hearts. It's just not as strong as the nun in white, this guy, really damn it. She lowered her head, dodging the hand that the old man came to him and quickly reached out. Sorata took a step forward and looked towards the back of the town. While his eyes were indifferent, he showed a murderous intent. He thought, he knew why these souls showed sadness and the hatred for Carterus. These souls should all be extracted by this guy after they died in excruciating pain using some unknown method. Just like the residents of Lantern Island, like Caribou, they died under the erosion of the years, and they should have never forgotten anything, is really cruel enough. As for why the woman also showed sadness and resentment. Maybe this woman was saved by Carterus in the first place, and even the child in her belly might belong to this guy. What a beast. At this moment, the sun in the sky emitting warm light suddenly changed its appearance, turning blood red, and the light emitted was no longer warm, but cold as if it wanted to freeze the soul. With the whining cold air, the whole town suddenly turned into a ghost. I saw countless souls around, all put down what they were doing, turned their heads to stare at Sorata's direction, and their clear eyes were instantly replaced by blood red. And then I don't know who started it, they followed one after another, rushing forward and back, all madly, rushing towards Sorata. The overwhelming black shadow instantly blocked the red light, making the place where Sorata was plunged into the ultimate darkness. As if time had stopped, the black shadows that were rushing towards Sorata stopped in the air as if they had been immobilized. And Sorata stepped forward, step by step, at a seemingly slow but extremely fast speed, leaving countless black shadows on the spot, and after his phantom, he appeared in front of an ordinary tavern in a few steps. Creak. Without hesitation, he pushed open the door, ignoring the surrounding souls that continued to rush towards him, ignoring the darkness of the tavern, raised his leg, and walked in. The moment he walked into the tavern, the black shadows around him seemed to have lost their target suddenly, and they froze in place in a daze, and then quickly dispersed, but the direction they retreated was not the original position, but the people around them. Dark. It seems that the darkness of Ultimate is their real home and the place they should really go. Chapter 229. The Gate of the Underworld. Hiding here, do you think I can't find you? In the blue pupils, there was a blue light with a silver mist, and Sorata looked behind the bar, smoking a cigarette, like a real old man, like an ordinary person. He said jokingly, I've said it all, these little tricks of yours are completely useless to me. As long as you are still in this world, no matter where you are hiding, I can find you. The only way out for you is to come out and fight me upright. Maybe I'm in a happy mood, and maybe I'll let you go. Boom boom boom. The old man didn't look at Sorata, took off the pipe unhurriedly, put the pipe down, knocked on the side of the bar, and then said to himself naturally, you know, at my age, I won't live for a few days, even if you let me go, my life is coming to an end. Old guy, your life is coming soon, what's the matter with Lousy? Well, it's none of your business, but what I want to tell you is that my life has entered a countdown. I'm not afraid of death. I'm so anxious, old man. I can use the ability that I can only use once in my life, that is to open the door of the underworld. The gate of the underworld. He picked up the pipe, took out the shredded tobacco, kneaded it back into the pipe, lit it, and took a deep breath. Then the old man looked at Sorata, his old face looming in the darkness of the shredded tobacco, full of eeriness. Yes, the gate of the underworld. Hiss, taking a puff of the cigarette, the old man opened his mouth, letting the shreds of tobacco flutter out from the corner of his mouth. I am a person with the ability to eat the fruit in the form of a zone phantom beast tiger. This fruit not only allows me to control the souls of the dead, but also to copy the abilities displayed by other devil fruits, to construct illusions through the eyes, and to obtain the authority to open the gate of the underworld after the level of awakening. Although I don't know what the world behind the door is like, I know that it is the world of the dead, and it can make this island fall into the real world of Wangshen. Speaking of this, he straightened his back, stared into Sorata's eyes, and said coldly, although I will definitely die afterwards, I also believe that you may be able to escape by then, but the people on this island, those of you partner, I'm afraid it's hard to say. You threatened me? Sorata frowned slightly, staring at Carterus with a flash of anger in her eyes. He didn't know if what this guy said was true, but he knew about the world of Wangshen, as if this world really existed. The fruit of the underworld that guy Brook ate was the soul that returned from the underworld after death and was resurrected. Advertisement, Yellow Spring. Let this guy go? He stared at Carterus, with a monstrous murderous intent erupting from him. He wanted to kill this guy, but he didn't want to risk his companions. He didn't know if he could really deal with the unknown Wangshen. After all, this thing is for the soul of. But he was not willing to let this guy go. No one knows, if the old guy spreads the news about him, it will cause the world government to go crazy. At that time, he will not be in any danger, but the people around him will be in great danger. Including the Yixin dojo in my hometown, I am afraid that Master Koshiro may be involved. You must know that the world government has been researching blood factors, researching Kaido, researching Charlotte Linlin, researching the Lunaria family. Want to copy the bodies of these monsters, and have the ability. If these guys know his ability, know that he is not demon fruit power, and know that he has more than one ability of teleportation, maybe he will really go crazy. Because, as long as they catch him, they will really be able to truly rule the world. Although this is an extravagant hope, although it is impossible for them to catch Sorata, you can't stop it, the real idea of the world government. If you don't let this guy leave, and don't let this guy release the unknown, what is the gate of the underworld, then he can only kill him in seconds. Instant kill, with his current attack, he really can't do it. This guy is not an ordinary person, but a monster through and through, a powerhouse no less than the 4 emperors, and a guy with countless terrifying abilities that are like bugs to ordinary people. He wants to kill in seconds, how is it possible? Carterus was not in a hurry, and leaned lazily on the counter, smoking a cigarette while admiring Sorata's ever-changing face, the corners of his mouth curved slightly. He was sure that the guy in front of him would definitely let him go. Because without the ability to instantly kill him, this guy will not gamble on the power of his gate of hell with his partner's safety. And to kill him in seconds, it wasn't him bragging. In this world, except Lord Yim, who he couldn't resist at all, no one would be able to do it. However, many things are often counterproductive. Advertisement conventional attacks certainly couldn't instantly kill Carterus, but who was Sorata? He himself is the biggest bug in the world. At this moment, a special wave suddenly rippled in this space. Carterus, who thought everything was under his control, suddenly felt a power that made his whole body tingle and his soul tremble, facing him. He raised his head, looked at Sorata's indifferent eyes that were completely emotionless, and looked at Sorata's right hand that he didn't know when he stretched out. His pupils suddenly contracted ultimately. On the tip of the index finger of Sorata's right hand, the space is like Uzumaki, constantly rotating and twisting. And the distorted center, a black, completely black, darker than the soul of darkness in his illusion, which seems to be hiding in the land of the underworld, is gradually forming a darker black hole. Surrounding the black hole is a distorted red halo, soundless, but emitting the ultimate danger, and the direction the danger is pointing at is him. What is this? Panic instantly climbed up his face and his soul. At the moment the black hole appeared, he felt the breath of death. This made him show his gaff for the first time in front of Sorata. He always thought that he was not afraid of death, but when death came, the instinctive fear of death in his heart let him know that he was still alone, so he could not face death calmly as he imagined. Sorata looked at Carterus, his eyes filled with murderous intent. Then his eyes were fixed, and he pointed in Carter's direction without hesitation. This is compressed from his spatial domain, the ultimate energy that can annihilate everything. It is the only ability he can think of that can instantly kill this guy at this time. And this time he was not a simple blow like killing the fish casually last time. Instead, he used all his strength. In his perception, the energy inside has skyrocketed by at least 5 times compared to last time. The moment this power came out, he felt a very dangerous aura outside his space domain. Along with the aura, the space outside his spatial domain appeared, as if it suddenly became sticky, as if the world was afraid of the energy in his hands, and the outside space was automatically defending. And this defense is gradually accelerating as the energy in his hands accumulates. Chapter 230. The ability to travel through time and space and, him. Cannot wait. Can't wait long, so there was no preparation for Carterus to say his last words. The black light, the ultimate black light, seemed to swallow up the space. There was no earth-shattering thunder and no strong impact, and it appeared directly in front of Carterus. Can't hide. Looking at the black that silently appeared in front of him, Carterus stared wide-eyed, his eyes full of despair. What the hell is this? He tried everything he could think of, and this thing seemed to lock his soul. It easily pierced through all his illusions, pierced through the woman in white who appeared in front of him, and then pierced him without hesitation, come out armed with colored defense. Then penetrate his brain, penetrate his soul, penetrate this illusory world, and appear directly outside. When the black energy appeared in the outside world, time on the island seemed to be suspended. A wave of things that surpassed everything that the people on the island had encountered, like the terrifying pressure of the sky falling, flooded the entire island in an instant. Let Kuina and Kuzan, who are fighting, stop their bodies, and then look up at the sky at the same time. But just looking up, they saw a scene that they would never forget in this life. I saw a black light across the sky and disappeared at the end of the line of sight, and what was left by that black light was a huge scar. Yes, scars, just like the scars that black light leaves on the face of this world. This scar is not an image that can be unforgettable to them, but after that scar, they vaguely seemed to see. Saw another world. Woo, wind. Not normal wind, but. It's the wind from another world. As soon as the wind came in, everyone on the island stopped in place, whether it was their bodies or their souls. Of course, Sorata is not included. I saw Sorata standing in the air. The space around him was violently distorted, as if he was in a time channel, making him look like a mosaic. It seemed that this world did not welcome him and wanted to send him out. This is the same here. And in front of his fingers, his eyes seemed to have crossed time, and his eyes fell on another world. There is nothing in this world, only 2 mountains straddling the darkness. The size of the mountain is beyond imagination. Advertisement. There is also a bottomless crack in the middle of the mountain, and as for the surrounding area, it is impossible to see because of the distance of sight. Looking carefully, he couldn't help but make his pupils widen, and a look of horror gradually appeared in his eyes. What kind of mountain is this? This shape is basically an eye, whose volume exceeds his cognition. With her eyes closed, Sorata can only see the outline, but nothing else. But judging from the size of the eyes, he knew that this thing was something he couldn't provoke at all. Even though this thing is sleeping now and has not opened its eyes, the sense of oppression transmitted through the crack made him travel to this world, and for the first time, fear emerged in his heart. The feeling that his soul seemed to be trembling violently made him feel like an ant facing a god at this moment. Looking at the crack and feeling the dangerous aura emanating from it, which was far different from the last time, he knew he had guessed wrong. The black hole condensed from his space should have directly penetrated the space barrier of this world. Not a space like Whitebeard smashed into space. Whether it is Whitebeard or the strong fighting, the energy they burst out is indeed very strong, but it is not strong enough to break the barriers of space in this world. It can only distort the space, but not to the extent of fragmentation. And the black hole power he condensed is obviously a power that completely surpasses this world. This kind of power, last time he thought it was just annihilation of matter, it seems that he was wrong, the degree of danger of this thing exceeded his imagination. Now it seems that this thing should be able to annihilate the space, allowing him to achieve ultra-long distance teleportation. This is just a basic application. If he condenses too much, he can even completely penetrate time and space, reaching the point of traveling through time and space. And this time, he completely used his ability to penetrate time and space. He doesn't know whether the opposite side is still in this world, but he knows that the distance between here and the opposite side should exceed his imagination. Anyway, it is definitely impossible to be around the planet one piece. Because of this thing, according to his observation, the eyes alone are beyond his imagination. I am afraid that the eyes are the size of an asteroid. Because the distance is too far and the surroundings are dark, he doesn't know the details, but what he feels and sees are only big or small. As for whether this thing is in this galaxy, he doesn't know. No wonder the world would send out obvious signals to prevent him from emitting this energy. Last time he thought the danger came from this world. Obviously not. He doesn't know what the thing on the other side is, but judging from the world, it seems that the ultimate is repelling him from using the black hole ability, and the aura emanating from the thing on the other side of the space, which he can't imagine. I am afraid that if this thing is real if you wake up, it may not be a good thing for this world. For a moment, maybe for a moment. The distorted space around Sorata gradually calmed down, and the black crack that spread from his fingers to the end of the world also gradually disappeared. Advertisement what disappeared together was the aura that made everything, the world, and Sorata tremble. Exhaling a breath, Sorata reached out and wiped his forehead with a rare layer of cold sweat that was already on the cloth at an unknown time. He didn't dare to imagine that if the guy on the opposite side really woke up and appeared in this world through the space crack he opened up, or if he got the coordinates of this world and came here by himself. What will happen to this world? It is also possible that nothing will happen when the other person wakes up, because human beings are probably not as big as bacteria in front of him. For such an existence, human beings are too weak. The other party might sneeze, maybe it can destroy an asteroid, and a slap might destroy the planet one piece. Shaking his head, he shook off the random thoughts in his mind. No matter what was facing him, even the world couldn't compete against it. No matter how much he thought about it, it was useless. Raising his hand, looking at the fingertip of his index finger, Sorata sighed in his heart. It seems that in the future, he can't use this thing indiscriminately, at least he can't use it until he doesn't know how to control this ability. Hey, maybe, when the time comes to really control this thing, then he will be able to achieve real ultra-long distance teleportation. This world is really getting more and more interesting. Raising his head, looking at the rising moon in the distance where the sea and the sky meet, a touch of longing appeared in the depths of his eyes. It doesn't matter even if you can't bear it, isn't there still his space field? And he feels that the space opened by this thing can allow other people to pass through, as long as the body can withstand the pressure of the space. Putting down his hands, his usual calmness and confidence returned to his face. Maybe by then I will be able to truly travel through time and space, return to the previous world, and go to other worlds. But, the ghost knows that this thing is so dangerous. There is also an ability that I haven't fully figured out until now. This thing is not like his teleportation. Teleportation is the ability of his body to travel through space, and it can only be used by himself. This thing is to break open space, so once he controls it, he no longer has to worry about the safety of his friends. Chapter 231 Splitting Pirates. The wind died down. The surroundings returned to their original state. Kuzan stared blankly at the fully restored sky, and he didn't know if the scene he saw just now was an illusion, because they couldn't really see what was behind the space crack like Sorata did. And the wind of time and space just now completely froze them in place, including their souls. But the terrifying aura that penetrated into his soul and made him tremble still lingers in his heart. What the hell is that? Turning his head, he looked at the unscathed Sorata floating above the sky, and Carterus beside him, who was completely lifeless. He knows. Their mission this time was a total failure. What kind of ability is this guy? He could tell from Carter's words when they first met that Sorata was not a devil fruit ability. As for other abilities, such as how Sorata blocked Carter's blow, and the ability to attack that would seriously injure him, he didn't know what it was at all. There was also the black energy beam that this guy killed Carterus. Although he didn't know what it was, He could feel that it gave him a feeling that surpassed the most dangerous thing he had ever seen in his life. Others call them admiral monsters. Compared with this guy, they are not monsters, this guy is. With Carter's death, the female soul standing in front of him, as well as the countless souls in the shadow of the ruins that had completely lost the appearance of the town, had been completely reduced to ruins by the battle. It's like losing your soul for a moment. They stopped in place, their blood-colored pupils gradually faded, revealing the clear, black and white eyes. Fluorescence, blue fluorescence. It's like fireflies in the forest in summer, constantly emitting from them. First a little bit, then a piece, and then connected into the sea, gradually illuminating the whole town, the whole island. This fluorescence should be cold and cold, but at this moment, it exudes a faint warmth. In this frozen island, it brings warmth like sunshine to everyone. They seemed to have been completely liberated, and slowly faded away the madness that appeared on their bodies. They turned their heads and looked at Sorata in the sky together, with unprecedented gratitude in their eyes. Then slowly knelt down, this scene, silent. But it shocked everyone who saw this scene, including Kuzan. This is our captain. Advertisement. At some point, the little friends walked into the town, Awa and others walked to Kuina, and Robin walked to Kuzan alone. She looked at the fluorescent lights that were gradually rising into the sky around her, and instead of looking at Kuzan, she raised her head and looked at Sorata in the sky, with a gentle smile on the corner of her mouth. He chuckled and said, "Mr. Captain, he is the most special person I have ever met. Even though he is only 17 years old, his thinking, in my opinion, surpasses all the people I have met in this world. I don't know why he is so powerful, but his firm and sunny heart has always led us in our team. Do you know?" Turning his head, Robin looked at Kuzan for the first time. At this moment, she is no longer the little girl who only knows how to run away, but a member of the silver-haired adventure group. This team gave her an unparalleled sense of security and gave her the courage to face the situation in front of her. It gave her hope, but it was also the figure of her succubus. What? Kuzan turned to look at Robin, a memory flashed in his eyes. When he sees Robin, he always thinks of his old friend Jaguar D. Sol. Think of this titan friend who has a gentle personality and always likes to laugh. I will think of O'Hara, even more, and think of what kind of justice he should pursue. Turning his head, he glanced at the partner who met Kuina and looked at the dark, cold sea in the distance, but under the moonlight, shining with cold light. Robin continued, "Our captain, I really hate pirates, real pirates. I know this." Kuzan turned his head and took a deep look at Sorata. This guy really hates pirates, and since he went to sea, he can tell how much he has hit pirates. So, Robin turned his head, stared at Kuzan, and said in a serious tone, "Our captain hates the name pirates very much. He always thinks that he is not a pirate, and he doesn't think our team is a pirate." "You are not a pirate group, what is that?" Kuzan became more confused the more he listened, and turned to look at Robin suspiciously. "The captain called our group, the adventure party." "Adventure group. Right." Robin nodded, and continued. "Adventure on the sea, the team that plays. But you have brought a threat to the world government. You killed the king of the countries that the world government joined, you killed the 7 warlords of the sea, and you killed Marine. Don't these guys deserve to die?" Robin stared into Kuzan's eyes with a hint of sarcasm on his face. "You don't know who these guys are and what they did." For Robin's words, Kuzan was speechless. Advertisement. Of course he knew who these guys Sorata killed were, and they were all damned. Although he personally agrees with this point, he looks at it from the standpoint of world government and Marine. Whether it's Marine, or the king of a member country of the world government, or the 7 warlords of the sea, it's not someone who pops up randomly that should be killed. And it is the world government that can kill these guys, and it can only be the world government. Therefore, he can only remain silent. All right. Robin waved his hand and continued. "I don't want to discuss this issue with you. I don't want you or Marine to agree with us. I know that as long as there is hostility and threat to the world government, it will be defined by you as pirates. For example, a 9-year-old girl like me can offer a reward of 79 million berry. Isn't it?" Silence, still silence. Kuzan has his own thoughts, his own pursuit, and his own justice. He knows the world government very well, he knew it after the O'Hara incident. Okay. It's impossible for you to classify everyone who goes to sea as a pirate. No one in this world can really stop people from going to sea, whether they are pursuing wealth, pursuing freedom, or simply wanting to go out to sea for adventure and fun. What is your captain's philosophy? What I want to say is some ideas of our captain. For people like us, the captain collectively refers to the adventurer team, or adventure group, for short. Because they are the most important rules in order to maintain the constant chaos in this world. However, the world is indeed indispensable for Marine and world government. Otherwise, his justice would not have changed from burning to lazy. Just as Kuzan was thinking wildly, Robin spoke again. Human beings, the sea, and the world, if there are no rules, there will be no order. In our captain's opinion, pirates are a very evil profession. Not who your world government wants to say is who is. That is not a definition of pirates, but a definition of people your world government wants to kill. As for the people who go to sea, our captains are divided into 2 categories. One is evil pirates. This kind of people really deserve to die, and the other kind of people, just like us, just want to take risks and play, and be heroes. By the way, what kind of person? But this world cannot exist without world government and without Marines. As long as there are sane people living in this world, it is impossible not to know this. That would turn into total chaos. Chaos is not a good thing for the sea, for this world, for the common people. So, even though the world government is rotten to the core, even though there are many people in Marine who only eat and do nothing, and even collude with pirates. Robin nodded, saying what Sorata had said to her. Chapter 232 Plans for Kuzan. Robin's words made Kuzan fall into deep thought. He really didn't expect that there is such a difference. In his opinion, some pirate groups are not evil, and there is no need to kill them all. He is not a Kainu. Although he met countless pirates in his life, he did not kill all the pirates he met, but selectively let some pirates go. This kind of pirate group is actually similar to the silver-haired group. The difference is that these pirate groups are very weak, but the silver-haired group is too strong. He never knew, what should such a pirate be called? But now Yinfa has the answer. Not to mention, the title of adventure group is quite appropriate. He didn't clean up all the pirates in the sea. This kind of fool would have the idea, because most of this world is above the sea, and human beings are the most complicated creatures. No one can stop people from going out to sea. No one can stop a person who goes out to sea and will not become a real pirate. So, why not split it? Kuzan stroked his chin. The more he thought about it, the more feasible it became. If there are more teams like the silver-haired group, it will actually be a good thing for the stability of the sea and marine. However, for some reason, the light in his eyes quickly dimmed again. Because it is not him, not marine, but world government that determines the direction of the world. For this kind of thing, don't say he is an admiral. Even if he becomes a marshal, he still needs to seek the consent of the world government to do this kind of thing. As for the world government, it is obviously impossible to distinguish between pirates and adventure groups. From the perspective of the world government, anyone who threatens the world government is a pirate. And it is not those little pirates who can threaten the world government, nor those pirates who pursue wealth. In fact, even the 4 emperors of New World are not qualified in the eyes of the world government. On the contrary, it is a silver-haired person who has no scruples, hates nobles, and hates the world government. It is the person who is the most threatening to the world government. And the people who go to sea with the purpose of adventure, the pursuit of freedom, and the behavior of justice, just happen to be, most of them are the same people as the silver-haired group. Therefore, no matter from which point of view, it is impossible for the world government to give up the reward for a person like Silver Hair. On the contrary, it will increase. In the final analysis, from the beginning of the establishment of the world government, it was decided that they were not the government of civilians, but the government of nobles and celestial dragons. He is very clear about this. It is because he is clear that he feels a headache. For the division of pirates that Robin said, he agrees very much, and believes that many Marines will also agree, but the top of Marine is the world government. As long as the world government does not agree, no matter how they promote it, they will not be successful. Unless one day, Marine changes the government. Revolutionary Army? Thinking of this, Kuzan raised his head and gave Robin a deep look in his eyes. Without saying anything, he raised his head and looked quietly at Sorata, who was standing in the air, not knowing what he was doing. Advertisement, whether it was Robin himself or Silver Hair, said these words to him through Robin's mouth. For what purpose, he didn't want to think about it. All he knew was that these words at least gave him another reason to fight for Marine, for the sea, and for himself in his confused heart. No matter what the future holds, at least he has to take the highest position in Marine first. Although Admiral can decide many things, it cannot decide the specific direction of Marine. Although the Marshal can't, at least he still has some right to speak. And what does the future world look like? The Marine in his heart does not pay attention to the affairs between countries. The Marine's duty is to maintain the stability of the sea, the stability of the islands without countries in the sea, and the safety of the coastal people, that's all. And Yinfa's division of pirates can obviously greatly increase the stability of the sea and the safety of civilians, which is very beneficial to Marine. Why doesn't he fight for it? Even if he knew that there would be a conflict with the world government in the future, he would not hesitate. At least it's more meaningful than today's laziness, isn't it? Before he knew it, he found that his justice had changed, and even his heart, which had been in a state of confusion, had changed following Robin's words. At this moment, a strong ambition burst out from that warm heart surrounded by solid ice. He must be the Marshal. In the past, he wanted to be a marshal because his philosophy was very different from that of a Kainu, and a Kainu wanted to be a marshal, so he was interested in the position of marshal. Now that he is a marshal, he has more and greater target. He wants Marine. Robin tilted his head and looked at Kuzan with curiosity. She felt that Kuzan seemed to have changed, and she didn't know if it was an illusion. He felt that the previous lazy aura on Kuzan seemed to be disappearing quickly. Shaking his head, Robin withdrew his gaze, turned and walked towards Kuina and others. What Kuzan will think is none of her business. She would appear in front of Kuzan for the first time, and say those words to him. It was indeed Sorata who specifically explained it. She didn't know Sorata's intentions, but since Sorata confessed, and she really needed to face Kuzan head-on once, she didn't resist much. Just one thing she was puzzled: how did Sorata know that they would definitely meet Kuzan? She couldn't figure this out. In fact, Sorata didn't expect this. He didn't expect that they would meet Kuzan so early. He was thinking of meeting this guy in the Seven Waters, or the Sabodi Archipelago, or simply in the New World. Based on his understanding of Kuzan, this guy was fighting for the position of marshal because he did not agree with the Kainu's ideas. How about another one, Fujitora, even Kizaru? Although he will fight, he will definitely not fight desperately. Advertisement Kizaru, I'm afraid he wouldn't even give it to him. Kuzan has been in a state of confusion since Ohara. On the one hand, he finds it difficult to agree with Akainu's justice, and also hates some orders from the world government, but on the other hand, he cannot do without Marine. That's why he changed from a passionate young man to a lazy uncle. This transformation lasted until he failed to compete with Akainu for Marshal. He didn't want to see Marine develop according to Akainu's righteous direction, so he resolutely left Marine and continued to search for the confused justice in his heart. To be honest, in Marine, whether it is Akainu or Kuzan, for their justice, he will not make any comments, because from the standpoint of the Marine, from the standpoint of the soldier, although Akainu's character is too strong and extreme, but it is because of his firmness that he is a true soldier. The way it should be. Isn't it? And in this chaotic sea, especially after the Summit War, facing the sea of complete riots, in fact, his extremes are just Marine, and he is also the person that the world government needs more. As for Kuzan, although this guy ate the coldest fruit, he is actually a very gentle person in his heart. He is not as extreme about justice as Akainu. And it was his gentleness that caused him to be so confused now, and also made Sorata look forward to him. Sorata didn't want to do something tiring, not to mention Akainu's justice. And with that guy's personality, it's simply impossible for him to divide the pirates. It is obviously more suitable for this guy to divide the pirates and create an adventure group system than him. Forget it. In fact, Sorata did not expect it to be so smooth. At your fingertips. There is also the future Admiral, Fujitora One Life. For Sakazuki, he can only say sorry, although he doesn't hate that guy, but it's hard to like him. That's why he asked Robin to meet Kuzan in the future and tell him what he said. At that time, it will no longer be the world government, but the revolutionary army that will control the world. For the revolutionary army, obviously, Kuzan would also be a better marshal. As for Kizaru, it's better to give this guy a goal and let him fight for it than this guy's current laziness, isn't it? Because in the not-too-distant future, he will go to the Holy Land on top of the world and slaughter that disgusting race. At least for him, Kuzan, who is more gentle with the sea, will obviously be a better person to sit on the position of marshal. This guy is so lazy, isn't it? He is very lazy. In Marine 3 Admiral, only Kuzan has the possibility to do this. Chapter 233 The Nun's Story. Air. Looking at the grateful eyes cast by the woman. In Sorata's eyes, it seemed that she saw a woman's life. The previous ones are similar to what Capri told, but the turning point occurred after the two families got engaged. The girl didn't know why, but she suddenly felt that the mayor's son made him particularly disgusting. Under this inexplicable emotion, she fled here. After going to sea, she was very lucky, and she met a very gorgeous boat not long after. On this ship, she met the love of her life, Carteris. At that time, Catales was very sunny, handsome, and modest, just like a prince, but she was a Cinderella from the mountains. Even if she fell in love with Catales at first sight, she didn't have the courage to go up to Catales for the first few days, said nothing. Just watching silently from a distance, in the well-dressed crowd, talking and laughing freely, generous and decent Carteris, and when their eyes meet in the air, she can always see Carter's sunny smile, while she was shy, quickly dodged and lowered her head. Until this ship, through the tsunami, through the darkness, is about to arrive at the destination of this trip, Sabo de Archipelago. Only then did she muster up the courage to go up to talk to Carteris. This conversation, but Mr. Life. After a few months of being together with Carteris, she found out that she was pregnant. She also discovered the identity of Carteris' celestial dragons, and even discovered that the person she had always loved was actually someone who could be her grandfather. People. Carteris, on the other hand, has been cheating on her. He doesn't love her. After a few months of enduring it, she couldn't take it anymore. So she ran away. Escaped from the Sabo de Archipelago, which seems to be prosperous, dreamlike, and full of happiness. She wants to go home, to the real home that loves her, and accommodates her. Unexpectedly, this time back, what was waiting was not the warmth of the family, but the bone-chilling cold. When the fire filled her surroundings, when she saw the faces of the kind villagers and relatives who loved her all the time under the fire, her heart was completely dead. However, I don't know if God was joking with her, just when the fire was about to completely engulf her. Here comes the man. Advertisement. He stepped on a black cloud, descended from the sky, extinguished the fire, and took her to the sky. After that, although she survived, even though her body was burned in many places and her face was disfigured, but the child in her stomach died young. God is too cruel. Why torture her like this? Just like a movie. Seeing this, Sorata could feel how desperate and hated the woman was at that time. The picture continued. The man, that is, after Carteris healed the woman, left behind a fruit that seemed to be flickering nonstop at this time, as if it would disappear at any time. The man disappeared after that, never to be seen again. She didn't leave the island until she fully recovered from her injuries, ate the fruit, and knew what the fruit was, and lived alone on this uninhabited island for nearly 20 years. She wanted revenge, not only her hometown, but Carteris as well. As soon as she ate the fruit, she knew that she couldn't beat Carteris with her own strength, so she stayed on the island of Jonan for so long. She went to her hometown first, and she wanted to make the people there regret for killing her child 20 years ago, and she also wanted to use Guo Guo's ability to make them completely her strength. The fruit she ate was Paramecia time fruit. She can extract the time of all creatures and transform it into her own time. This kind of time can only be used for her power and cannot be used to prolong life, so she can stop time, speed up time, and slow down time. Of course, you can also turn back time on yourself. Seeing this, Sorata could think of why the world government and Carterus were so confident that they could kill him. This guy always thought he was devil fruit, his own tiger fruit could copy his teleportation and then use the time fruit to extract his time, then he would have no chance to escape. No, among the known people in this world, no one can escape this guy's pursuit. It's so scary. Fortunately, this guy is old, so old that he can only do it once, and this guy is so arrogant that he has such a powerful fruit, and he didn't let the woman take time beforehand. Fortunately, he didn't let Ahua and the others step into the time domain of women. Otherwise, let this guy take time, maybe he really has nothing to do with this guy. After all, although the fruit of the woman has the same name as the fruit of Kazuki, there is a big difference in the way of development. The fruit ability of Kazuki is not so much time, it is more appropriate to say that it is through the fruit. Because of her fruit ability, it can only be used for time travel, and it can only be used for time travel to the future, and cannot be used for fighting. Advertisement. But the fruit of a woman is different. Her fruit obviously exists for fighting. If a woman can know hockey, especially observation hockey, she doesn't need to be armed, as long as she develops her knowledge and fruit ability to the peak, then she will be another invincible existence in this world. Just by going back in time, no one can hurt her, and with the top observation hockey, even if the strength exceeds her, it is impossible to kill her instantly. As long as she doesn't kill her in seconds, she can always stay in the peak state. However, this fruit is evil enough. The premise of all abilities is to take other people's time to use it, which reminded him of a person. Tokasaki Kurumi. In a good-looking anime, a person he likes very much, a woman. But even if this guy prepares the energy of time in advance, he can only resist him in a normal state. When he uses the black hole energy obtained from the compressed space, he still has to die. Because his black hole energy in space cannot be resisted by the abilities of this world. Of course, it also includes the power obtained by devil fruit in this world. Although it is the ability of time, it is not a rule, nor is it the power of the rules of the world. It is just some superpower. The screen continued to flash, and he had vaguely guessed the next screen. After the woman absorbed the time of this townsman, Carter's appeared. There is no hockey, only fruit, and a woman who has no specific information about Carter's strength. How can she be Carter's opponent? So a face-to-face fell into Carter's illusion, allowing Carterus to kill him easily. When Carterus pulled out the woman's soul, the woman learned all the truth. Only then did she know why she suddenly felt disgusted by the mayor's son, why she fell in love with Carterus at first sight, why her parents, who had always loved her so much, were suddenly indifferent when she returned home, and why the temperament of the people in the town changed drastically. It turned out that this was the fantasy that Carterus had created for her for everyone in the town. The love of parents is real, and so is pregnancy. But the dislike of the mayor's son, the love at first sight for Carterus, and the change in his parents' temperament towards him after his return, were all false. False, all false. The endless madness instantly engulfed her heart, causing her to completely collapse. In the darkness, only the light of hatred was supporting her until the darkness disappeared, and her soul was completely relaxed. Only then did she see the real light again, and knew about Carter's death, and even more, what he hated. People are killed by the benefactor in front of them. Advertisement chapter 234 dimensional bag like the souls in the town. A lot of blue light rose from the woman's body. She took one last look at Sorata, and a gentle voice came out as her lips moved. Thanks. The voice did not spread to the outside world, but directly rang through Sorata's soul. It was low and magnetic, but it seemed that he hadn't spoken for a long time, and it was filled with an indelible hoarseness. Sorata nodded, passed his left hand over his waist, raised the wine gourd, raised his head and took a sip, then smiled and said, "You don't need to thank me. This guy wants to kill me. I just kill him instead. Do you really want to kill me? Thank you. Just thank this guy for his overreaching." The woman took a deep look at Sorata, glanced past him, turned her head to glance at the town below, did not stop, then turned to look at Carter's body flowing aside. The hatred in her eyes was revealed again. As if impatiently waiting, the blue light on her body rose even faster. At this moment, she was like a burning lamp. As she was burning rapidly, her soul was also rapidly dissipating. Afterwards, the blue light followed the wind and sprinkled to the world. At the same time, the woman was completely disappeared. She probably wants to chase after her, to the underworld, and take revenge. Glancing at the place where the woman disappeared, Sorata murmured softly. Then, as if sensing something, his right hand took out two miniaturized fruits from his pocket, looking at the two devil fruits with special patterns wrapped around his palm, the corners of his mouth curved upwards, and a happy smile appeared on his face. These two fruits can definitely produce two top powerhouses. But their team is full of people who ate devil fruit. Hey, it would be great if the three of Ahua didn't eat devil fruit so early. Sorata sighed again at the incident. Withdrawing his hand, he stuffed the fruit back into the pocket of his trousers. In fact, it's not a pocket, it's a dimensional bag similar to dimensional space that he purposely compressed the space to store various fruits. The entrance is in his trouser pocket. Otherwise, he wouldn't carry a backpack every time he met the fruit he wanted. Still lazy. How else to put it, laziness is the driving force behind all scientific and technological progress. The advancement of science and technology is to allow human beings to have more time to think about the world, life, and everything. Nonsense, just gibberish. Do not mind, advertisement. The fruit of time is good to say. It is a very powerful fruit in the hands of good people, but if it falls into the hands of evil people, then it will be a fruit that can destroy the world. It is unimaginable that when an evil person possesses this fruit and walks in the world of ordinary people, he will become a walking natural disaster. Therefore, he does not intend to let this fruit appear in this world again. But the tiger fruit, such an all-round fruit, it would be a pity that there is no partner to eat it. It's a pity that he can't eat this thing, at least he didn't figure out what the energy in devil fruit is. And why are you afraid of water? It is impossible for him to eat this stuff. Not to mention that this thing is completely useless to him, and it also gave him an extra weakness out of thin air. He is not a fool, so he will eat this thing. He hasn't fully understood his own spatial ability yet. Looking at the old man floating in front of him, looking into the old man's eyes, he could feel the fear that had not dissipated from the old guy's pupils. It seems that his black hole energy really frightened this guy so much that after his death, he still had fright. But for such a person who is completely evil, he does not have the slightest pity or sympathy. Even if this guy is an old man, even if he is dead, he looks at the old man with an indelible disgust. It was brought by the woman's memory, and it was also because this guy was brought by the most evil person he has met since he went to sea. He stretched out his right hand, palm forward, and grabbed Carter's body. The surrounding space suddenly shrank inward with Carterus as the center. The space vibrated, and a whirlwind blew up. Eyes fixed, Sorata's clawed hand squeezed hard. Amidst the buzzing sound, the whirlwind was also sucked towards Carterus, including the surrounding blood, and also, the surrounding blue light. It seemed that in the blue light, there were countless souls carrying outrageous hatred. Without Sorata's control, they all rushed towards Carter's dead body. Caw caw caw. This is the sound of bones breaking, but after adding more blue light, it seems that there is a sound of gnawing on everything. Sorata looked at the blue light that was gradually disappearing. His right hand slowed down slightly until the blue light disappeared, until the sound of crackling and bone breaking came from Carter's body. Then he gripped it to the end. Advertisement. The space is distorted, centered on the sphere formed by Carter's body. The space rapidly collapses inward, and the black hole appears again, but in Sorata's domain, and Sorata didn't use all his strength, so there is no extra breath, the outside world, nor did it say that danger was coming, nor did the world stop him. Looking at the black hole, Sorata did not explore too much. With a thought, the black hole disappeared in the space distortion, leaving a ball of dust wrapped in white mist on the spot. Human beings are really strange. Even the energy of his black hole cannot be completely extinguished, and there are still dust and water molecules left. Strangeness. He didn't know what this thing was before, and he just thought it was fun and handsome when he did it. Now that he knows that the energy of the black hole completely surpasses the energy of this world, he will be surprised that there are still things left behind after the death of human beings. Shaking his head, he didn't want to think about it. Turning around, the space domain retracted, and the white mist and dust drifted into the distance along with the wind. The flying speed is like a person's life, coming as the union of two objects. Walk 2. Taking a step forward, Sorata's figure disappeared directly in place and appeared beside Kuzan. Glancing at him, he didn't say hello or say anything, but walked past him and walked towards Kuina and the others. Robin told Kuzan everything he wanted to say, so when I come down, I just have a face-to-face with Kuzan. He admired this guy very much, on the one hand because of Robin, and on the other hand because of his impression of this guy when he watched anime in his previous life. This is a good Marine, with his own thoughts and his own concept of justice. And although this guy is one of the main combat forces following Carterus to ambush them this time, he didn't use all his strength to face Kuina from the beginning. Knowing this guy's mission, he should obviously it is a mandatory task of the world government, and he himself probably doesn't want to come. Shaking his head slightly, he didn't care about these anymore. When this guy goes back this time, I'm afraid he has to explain to the world government what's going on here. After all, Carterus is dead, CP0 is also dead, and only Marine remains. Enough of the guy's headache. Ha ha. Thinking of this, his pace of progress couldn't help becoming more brisk. Chapter 235 Factions in Marine. The coldness of the moon and the icy coldness of the ground could not stop the enthusiasm of the crowd. Just finished a big win. Although Awa and Adao were a little impulsive during the process, as far as the result is concerned, it was okay, at least no one was injured this time. So even in the icy world created by Kuzan's ability, everyone didn't feel cold. Back on the boat, a special hot pot was brought down, under the bright moon, on the sea below the side of the boat. Everyone sat in a circle, sitting on the ground, and ate ice and snow hot pot. Pick up a piece of seafish slices that have been frozen by ice cubes, shining in the moonlight with a cool halo. Sorata puts the dipping sauce mixed with the unique spices on their island sent by Maya in the small bowl in front of them, sent it to his mouth, squinted his eyes slightly, and then chewed lightly. Grand Line's unique deep-sea fish fillets are more crispy and sweet after being frozen, mixed with unique spice dipping sauce. One bite, people can't help but indulge in this worldly delicacy. This piece of sea always gives people freshness. This kind of fish was caught before they came to this island. Seeing that this was another kind of fish that had never been seen before, everyone unanimously decided to store it and wait for the affairs on the island to be dealt with before enjoying it slowly. Delicious, did not live up to everyone's expectations. Opening his eyes, he glanced at Kuzan, who was standing quietly in the distance. Standing on top of the ice and snow, this guy exudes a sense of loneliness, which is in stark contrast to the excitement here. He didn't leave, let alone come. It seemed that he wanted to wait, waiting for one of them to pass. Clearly, there was something to say to the man. Withdrawing his gaze, he looked at Robin. Robin, it seems that Mr. Admiral has something to tell you. Why don't you go and see what he wants to say? Putting down his chopsticks, Robin smiled at everyone. Then he stood up slowly, turned and walked towards Kuzan. Tell me what this guy wants to say to Robin Chan. What else? This guy is one of the main culprits in the destruction of Robin's hometown. Arlo stared at Kuzan in the distance, with hostility rising from his body. If you want me to say, just leave this guy here. Snapped, a big hand quickly smacked the back of Arlo's head, making a crisp sound, and at the same time knocked out the food he was chewing. Advertisement, what are you guys doing? Turning around, Aluo stared angrily at the owner of the big hand, Adao. Adao withdrew his hand, picked up a piece of sashimi, glued it with dipping sauce and put it in his mouth, and said slowly while chewing, are you a fool? Robin Chan knew this admiral at first glance, and Sorata and Kuina have already done this to keep this guy. Can he let him watch us for so long? After finishing speaking, he turned his head and glanced at Aluo contemptuously. Boom, Aluo punched the ground, staring at Adao, with angry flames in his eyes. You be ******D. Do you want to fight again? Fight. Adao, who just looked away, didn't turn her head, squinted, and gave Aluo a look of extreme contempt. It's you. Ah. I can't stand you fellow. Speaking of which, Aluo was about to get up and go to have a fight with Adao. But at this moment, Kuina's cold voice sounded, enough. There are no extra words, but it is like a basin of ice water, instantly extinguishing Aluo's anger, making him wilt like an eggplant beaten by frost. This admiral saved Robin's life, and he can be considered a moderate in marine. He is not a person who kills all pirates indiscriminately, regardless of good and evil. Kuina glanced at everyone, stretched out his chopsticks, picked out a slice of lotus root from the hot pot, put it in a small bowl in his hand, and said while eating, in the beginning, this guy didn't use his full strength to fight me. He didn't use his full strength to fight me until I used thunder breath. That's why Sorata and I let him go. Although this guy is an admiral, he's not a bad guy. He's Robin's savior. It's not a bad thing to keep him in marine, but a good thing. Good thing? Arlo also came back to his senses. Before, he didn't know that Kuzan was Robin's savior, so he showed hostility towards Kuzan. After all, although they were not injured this time, they were equally dangerous. If Sorata hadn't warned in advance, maybe they would walk into the town, not only becoming someone else's strength, but also possibly becoming old forever. This is what the previous woman told them. They were also frightened for a while after hearing this. It turns out that the town is so dangerous. That's why he showed deep hostility towards Kuzan, who was with Carter's. Even after the battle was over, his hostility didn't dissipate. Advertisement, okay. Gudu. Sorata took a sip of the wine, stretched out his hand, wiped his lips with his sleeve, then took Kuina's words and continued. Keep him. What Kuina is talking about is on the one hand, and on the other hand, because marine is now mainly divided into two pi, one is Admiral Sakazuki, titled, Akainu. This guy is the hawk in marine, who believes in the concept of radical justice, and treats everything that has the possibility of becoming evil, with ruthless means. This guy is the most soldier-like guy among the three admirals. To be honest, I still admire him very much. If this guy wasn't too extreme, I wouldn't bother with Marine's affairs. In fact, Akainu is a little gentler in his work and personality, and does not attack civilians, so he is a good candidate for the Marine leader. Then, where's that guy over there? Ahua pushed the frame of the mirror, turned his head to look at Kuzan who was talking to Robin in the distance, and a trace of curiosity flashed in his eyes. This guy? Sorata leaned back, and an ice wall automatically rose from the ice behind him. As if welcoming him, the ice wall automatically blocked his back, preventing him from falling down. Taking a sip of his wine, Sorata continued, this guy is a representative of another faction in Marine. Although he believes in lazy justice, he doesn't deny the justice of others. People who think that justice has different opinions on different positions, and they will change with their positions, coupled with his character, he has become a representative of the moderate faction in Marine. The moderate faction advocates stabilizing the situation in the sea. Although they also attack pirates, they will not be as extreme as the Hawks. Their method of catching pirates is much more moderate, and they will not do it for the sake of catching pirates. Pirates and civilians, so it will not cause a lot of casualties. And this guy. Speaking of which, Sorata paused slightly, took a sip of wine and continued, and during this guy's fight against pirates, if he finds kind pirates, he will turn a blind eye and close one eye depending on the situation, and let some pirates go. Although what he does is not what a soldier should do, but for adventurers who have gone out to sea and have done nothing evil, let this guy be the highest position in the Marine. Whether it is for the Marine or the sea, it's a great choice. Top position, Marshal? After hearing Sorata's words, everyone glanced at Kuzan in the distance, and then turned to look at Sorata. You don't need to think about that position, it's impossible to sit on it so easily. And keeping this representative of one of the two factions in Marine is indeed a good choice for both Marine and Dahai. Actually, there is another faction in Marine that Sorata did not mention. That's the fishing faction led by that Kazaru guy. The guys in this faction are a group of Buddhists, and Kazaru doesn't have the ambition to compete for a marshal, so the people in this faction, from top to bottom, are all lying down. After all, what kind of leaders there are, and what kind of subordinates there will be. Isn't it? Chapter 236 Fame and Fortune. The early sun rises in the east. The sun shines on this frozen sea area and the frozen island, and the reflection of the light makes this area shine with crystal light. Looking at it from a distance, the entire sea area looks like a world of solid ice, filled with breathtaking beauty. On the side of the island, in the dilapidated pier, frozen in the ice on the Liberty, after breakfast, everyone stood at the bow, looking at the back of their captain, Sorata, waiting for him to sail. Looking at the completely ruined town in the distance, and feeling the breath of time emanating from it, Sorata sighed slightly in his heart. This is the way the world is. Full of the law of the jungle. The law of the jungle preys on the strong. Ordinary people are like mortals in the world of cultivating immortals. They don't even have the right to choose death. Pirates, villains, nobles, world government, celestial dragons. Even the aftermath of that strong man's confrontation can destroy the world and cause countless deaths and injuries to these mortals. Regarding this point, although he sighed, he didn't have any other thoughts. He is a human being, not a god, and cannot control the suffering of all living beings. Again, this is the way the world is. Extraordinary. What is extraordinary? Transcendence means that after possessing a certain power, one is no longer immortal at all. And in this world, there is more than one kind of extraordinary power. That's why the ordinary people here are so involuntary that they can't even choose to die. Hockey, devil fruit, special races, and even powers he doesn't know about. All these forces cause the ultimate division of this world. And behind this split, there is no organization that can suppress the world and establish a truly fair order, which is why ordinary people in this world, especially ordinary people on the islands in the sea, have such a difficult life. But these have nothing to do with him. Shaking his head, he turned around and looked at Chuyang rising from under the ice in the distance, with a smile on his face. No matter what direction the world will develop in the future, it has nothing to do with them. Their existence is just a drop in the ocean for the rotation of the world. So there is no need to be depressed because of seeing the evil of Ultimate, and there is no need to be sad for other people's lives. They still have their own way to go. We must walk steadily, freely, and with laughter. This guy's ice is really powerful. Withdrawing his gaze, he looked at the thick layer of ice under the boat. There are no chances on the island. Only when we get to the sea do we realize how terrifying this guy's coldness is. Advertisement, I'm afraid it's tens of meters thick. Looking at the lifelike fish frozen in a wave, Sorata murmured in his heart. That guy Kuzan just left last night on his bike. As for what he and Robin had said, Sorata didn't ask. If you want to come, it's nothing more than talking about Jaguar de Sol, then talking about their team, and finally talking about O'Hara is still alive. Turning his head to look at everyone, Sorata smiled gently, then turned around and took a step forward, stretched out his hands and patted the guardrail of the bow, and then gave a firm grip. Caw. Liberty trembled, and the solid ice that sealed Liberty's lower body continued to shatter under an inexplicable force. Raising his head and looking ahead, Sorata's eyes were fixed, and the nebula turned slightly in the blue pupils with silver mist. Then, while the ship was shaking, Liberty seemed to be pulled by a pair of invisible hands, and gradually broke free from the shackles of the ice, and flew into the sky. After flying to the same height as Chuyang, the hull stopped, and under Sorata's control, the hull was like a bullet, breaking through the air with a bang, and flying forward. Under the shining of the sun, an icy blue light band was left in the air. This frozen sea area is a prison for most ships, but for them, obviously not. Because they can fly. Next, what will be waiting for us? Sorata withdrew his hand and stood at the bow of the ship. His whole body was like a nail. His feet were firmly nailed to the deck of the bow, letting the oncoming wind blow his clothes and his silver hair. His body remained motionless. Capital of Seven Waters, Eni's Lobby. In my mind, the image of the capital of Seven Waters and the image of Eni's Lobby flashed across. Robin didn't board the boat of Luffy's group, but followed them. The world government would not be so stupid as to send CP9 to seek death. And when Kuzan went back this time, although this guy didn't fight him, he didn't know what his specific ability was, but because he was not a devil fruit, but had special abilities, he also killed the world government's ace Cartly S. This must make the world government's threat level to him rise to the top. In this case, whether it is the world government or the Marine, it is temporarily impossible to send anyone to trouble them. Because judging by the strength of their group, not sending someone at Admiral's level would be courting death. Even if Admiral is dispatched, at least 3 or more are required, and there is no way to limit his ability. Even if there are more than 3, it is impossible to catch him, and he may be counter-killed. It is impossible for the world government and Marine not to know this. And it's impossible for Marine to dispatch all the strong for their group. So in the future, before the power that can limit his teleportation ability is found, it is impossible for the world government and Marine to trouble them again. But there is another possibility, advertisement that is. Raising his head, looking at the clear blue sky, a cold light flashed in his blue pupils. What the hell are you? Without thinking too much, he retracted his gaze, and the cold light in his eyes disappeared. While the world government may not come to them personally, it will increase their bounties considerably. Fame and fortune are a double-edged sword. In this sea, there are always some people who take this thing very seriously. Although he has a record of tying Admiral and beheading Shichibukai, this does not stop countless people who pursue fame. Although these people know that Admiral is strong, they haven't really felt it, so even if they know that they are strong, they still have fantasies, dreaming of taking their heads and becoming famous all over the world. If you are a bounty hunter, you can also get a berry that they can't spend all their lives. So, as long as their bounties skyrocket again. In addition, the world government will not take the initiative to report the results of this battle, let alone state the specific strength of their group. World government and Marine can't deal with them now, so they can only come up with this trick. Sorata didn't have to think about it. What if an astonishing powerhouse emerges from somewhere, or a demon fruit power that can limit Sorata's teleportation? It will also make those ambitious and crazy people shake their hearts and at the same time, become greedy. With their current strength, they will not be afraid of anyone or any force. If the strong man really comes, he can still have fun with Kuina, can't he? So, just as a practice for your partners, add a touch of excitement to this boring sailing journey. I'm afraid they haven't arrived at the capital of the Seven Waters yet, and their new reward order will be flying over the entire sea. Especially since he's almost 18. The world is so big that many people don't even know how big the world is. Even the world government cannot know how many islands and people there are in this world. But come on, at 18, he feels that his body will be fully mature, and his spatial domain will be further improved by then. So, this will cause a lot of people who are overwhelmed to come to trouble them. I'm looking forward to it. Going out this time is another eventful voyage. This is Conspiracy. Chapter 237 Skyrocketing Reward. Sure enough, it was as expected by Sorata. On the Liberty's bow, Kuina tossed a few coins to the newspaper bird, and walked over with a stack of newspapers. He sat down next to Sorata, and then leaned his back on Sorata's left shoulder, unfolded the newspaper with a clatter, and read it. It's all little news, nothing special. The world government really didn't report any news about Lantern Island. After all, the ambush of Marine and world government failed. 2 admiral-level people, and one of them is the ace of the world government who has mastered Conqueror's entanglement, and possessed many special abilities, and died in the battle with Sorata. How does the world government report on this? What? Turning to the next page, Kuina stopped, then quickly sat up straight, turned her head to look at Sorata. The corners of her mouth were curved up, and 2 shallow dimples appeared on her cheeks. What's wrong? Put down the notebook in your hand. This is a collection of stories, all about some interesting rumors in the sea. For example, the article he is reading now is about an island full of gold that will appear from time to time on the sea under the setting sun in an unknown sea area. It has long since disappeared on the sea with the setting sun. There are many such rumors in the sea, so some people saw the business opportunities, compiled these stories into books, and then published them in the sea. Because the stories are combined with rumors, some of them are true, making the book lively and interesting. So this book has become a must-have book in the collection of many people who go to sea. And it just so happened that Robin happened to have this book in his library, and he took it out when he saw it, and passed the time to read it when he was free. There are many similar books in Robin's bookcase. Every time she goes to an island, she will buy a batch of books and come back. Although most of them are historical books, sometimes they will bring back very interesting storybooks. Gradually, there are more books of this type. Although she has not been with Sorata for a long time, don't forget that she is the direct leader of the Barlock studio. She has been to the islands in front of the Grand Line, so she has a lot of books in the room in the rain. After boarding Sorata's ship, the books were naturally moved to the ship. Turning to look at Kuina, Sorata had a smile on his face. Look, a new reward. Kuina smiled and took out several reward orders from the newspaper's interlayer. A reward? Seeing the reward in Kuina's hand, Sorata's eyes flashed a gleam. Is it really here? This is a conspiracy of the world government, and he can't stop it. Reward. Advertisement. The 3 of Ahua, who were doing nothing and dozing off on the lawn in the middle of the deck, heard Kuina's voice, and quickly stood up from the lawn as if they had been injected with chicken blood in an instant. Bang bang, briskly walked up to the bow, then stood beside Sorata, looking at Kuina expectantly. Even Robin, who was quietly reading the book next to him, put down the book, sat up straight and looked at the reward order in Kuina's hand. Seeing that Sorata didn't answer, Kuina had no choice but to withdraw her hand, and then sat cross-legged on the recliner and read by herself. Silverhair Pirates, Captain, Silverhair Sorata, offers a reward of 2.5 billion berry, regardless of life or death. For Sorata's bounty, no one was surprised at all. Even though his bounty increased by 1 billion this time, reaching an unprecedented 2.5 billion, they didn't have any extra emotions. Instead, they felt that the world government was less. The world government is not easy to give. They wanted to give Sorata a top-level reward, but the reward they gave was not to make Sorata reach a level that the world dare not challenge. If there was too much reward, who would trouble Sorata and his gang? Impossible to count on the 4 emperors of the New World. So after discussion, it was unanimously decided to give 2.5 billion. It's not particularly high, it's so high that people look up to it, but it's not low either. The reward in the middle that can make people greedy is just right. Seeing no response from the crowd, Kuina flipped through the rewards and looked at the next one. When she saw the reward above, she couldn't help but put a happy smile on the corner of her mouth. Although she knew that Sorata hated pirates, the feeling of being recognized for her strength still made her feel happy. Silver-haired pirates, Vice Captain, blue-haired Kuina, a reward of 1.5 billion berry. 1.5 billion? Everyone glanced at Kuina with surprise in their eyes, but after thinking of Kuina's soaring strength after eating thunderfruit, everyone felt relieved. Being able to fight Admiral and hurt Admiral, the reward is still very reasonable. Next is ours. The three of Ahua leaned forward slightly, their backs were arched, and their heads stretched out long, like a turtle. Hee. Kuina glanced at the three of Awa and smiled faintly. What's the rush? Shaking her head, she looked back, then turned over her own bounties and looked at the one behind. Without pausing, he read it directly. Silver Hair Pirates, Chef, Wallace Hanajiro, reward, 555 million berry. 555 million? A string of question marks appeared on Ahua's head. He stared at Kuina in disbelief, then reached out to take his own bounty from Kuina's hand. When he saw that it was really 555 million, he immediately froze, in place. The last time he offered a reward of 500 million, that is to say, after so long, his strength has improved so much, and the bounty has only increased by 55 million. Ignoring Awa, who was stunned, Aluo and Adao quickly looked at Kuina with anticipation in their eyes. Advertisement without keeping them waiting, Kuina read directly. Silver-haired pirates, helmsman, Momotaro, offer a reward of 150 million berry. 150 million? So, Adao took the reward order from Kuina, pretended to glance at the reward on it indifferently, and then stood proudly aside, but from the crescent eyes of this guy, you can know that this guy is still very happy of. Is it the last one? Robin looked at the only reward order left in Kuina's hand, and there was no disappointment in his eyes. Apart from Sorata, she is probably the person on board who is least interested in offering bounties. Regardless of whether it is the three of Ahua or Kuina, although they are no longer proud of being offered a reward by the world government, this is a new gadget after all, and it is also a recognition of their strength, so every time they see a reward order, they still can't help it. Live happily. This last one is mine. Aluo rubbed his hair stinkingly, then rolled his eyes, and glanced at Awa and Adao beside him. All right. Why do you have 50 million berry more than me? He admits that Aloe is indeed more dangerous than he makes people feel, but this is not the reason that Aloe can add 50 million berry to him. 200 million? Hearing this, Adao quit. He took a step ahead of Aluo and took Aluo's reward order from Kuina. When he saw that it was really 200 million, his face suddenly became gloomy. Just because he can attack from a distance? Aluo ignored Adao, gave him a haughty look, and then stood on the sidelines alone, admiring himself. But why is Arlo? Just like Awa last time. Fortunately, Awa said that his reward was already high, and it could be increased by 55 million. This time it was no longer the lookout, but the sniper and the navigator, and the reward was the same as Aluo guessed, and it was indeed the one with the most increase among them. And Kuina didn't keep him waiting too long, glanced at the reward order, and read it out directly. As for the person who made the world government feel the most threatened on Lantern Island this time, he believed that it must be him, so his reward should be the one with the most increase among the three of them. Silver-haired pirate, sniper and navigator, a reward of 200 million berry. If it wasn't for Kuina being here, he would actually rush up and fight this guy. The look of this stinky fart made Adao's teeth itch, and he wanted to go up and have a fight with this guy. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but look forward to it even more. Chapter 238 The Smoking Tom. Sorata saw everyone's reactions. Although everyone cared too much about the reward, he didn't say anything. After all, it only took half a year for them to go to sea together. It is definitely not as good as those old fritters who have been at sea for many years. After they have experienced a lot in the future, they will not take the bounties seriously. After all, strength is not necessarily reflected by bounties. Who knew that even Buggy could be offered a reward of 3.1 billion? Worthy of the owner of Conqueror's luck. Withdrawing his gaze, he stretched out his hand and rubbed Kuina's head, then raised his head, his eyes crossed the sparkling sea in front of him, and looked at the place where the sea and sky connected in front of him. He knew that the world would go completely berserk because of their reward at this moment. Fame and fortune. Immediately following fame is profit. And most of these vicious people who go to sea are in pursuit of profit. Although the Sorata group is the world's top existence in the world government and marine, but in the new world who are qualified to challenge the four emperors, and those arrogant people who don't know how to live or die in the first half, they are obviously a group of sweet momos. These guys, after knowing the bounty of their group, will come to trouble them in groups. The pirates in New World may not return to the paradise, but the pirates in this paradise, to them, are probably like a vulture staring at carrion. What are you thinking? Kuina threw the newspaper and the reward order on the side coffee table, reached out to take Sorata's hand, hugged it in her arms, and looked at him suspiciously. Nothing. Withdrawing his gaze, he looked down at Kuina, leaned back on the recliner, chuckled and said, haha. We may be very busy in the next period of time. Busy? Okay. Sorata nodded, glanced at the reward order placed on the coffee table, and said in a slightly mocking tone. There are actually not many records that our group can get. There are countless people who are for fame and profit. Oh, after thinking about it for a while, Kuina knew what Sorata meant, but she didn't have any extra emotions about the troubles that would follow. Instead, she still had a little expectation. What is the purpose of going to sea? Isn't it just to appreciate the world and fight with all kinds of people? Not only did Kuina not take it seriously, but the three of Ahua and Robin also didn't take it seriously. Who are they? Advertisement. They are the silver-haired adventure group. No, they should be members of the Freedom Adventure Group. Their captain, Sorata, is the world's top expert who can kill an admiral-level expert. How could he be afraid of Xiao Luolu? Even if there may be a lot of little minions coming, but no matter how many ants there are, they are still ants. Could it be possible to hunt and kill elephants? Woo woo woo, under the water in the sky, a train is breaking through the waves and driving steadily on the blue sea. From a distance, the train looks like a long worm in the sea, making bangs, a burst of white smoke from time to time above the huge train head, and the horn sound that Sea Kings hates. Is this the sea train? At the bow of the Liberty, everyone was lying on the guardrail, looking at the train in the distance with surprise in their eyes. There is actually a train that can run on the sea. Does Robin Sauce know who invented this? Withdrawing their gazes, everyone looked at Robin, who was leaning sideways and leaning on the guardrail on his left. Robin tilted his head, glanced at the train in the distance, then turned his head to meet everyone's curious eyes, with the corners of his mouth slightly curved upwards. He smiled and said, "If I read this train correctly, it should be the Smoky Tom, and this sea train was invented and built by Mr. Tom, who has the same name as this train. Mr. Tom is really great." Ahua pushed the frame of the mirror, and a gleam flashed in his eyes. Could it be that following this sea train, we can reach the capital of 7 waters? Okay. Robin nodded, and looked back at the train in the distance. The sea train has not been in operation for a few years, and currently only this one is in operation. It usually connects the capital of the 7 waters and the life of the nearby islands. It only runs once a day. Hasn't it been in operation for a few years? Why not build more, so that the blockade of the inherent routes of the Grand Line can be broken, and the islands here can be connected to each other, so that no matter it is for civilians, businessmen, or nobles. Very good. Adao looked at Robin with a cigarette in her mouth, and asked about her doubts. Robin pondered for a while, without looking back, looked at the train in the distance, and said quietly, Mr. Tom originally built 2 trains, and the first sea train that was built was a prototype machine, which was not put into use because it couldn't break. Robin withdrew his gaze and looked at the crowd again. Let me tell you about Mr. Tom. Okay, everyone nodded. Mr. Tom, it's actually a murloc. Murlocs, Arlong's kind of murlocs. Advertisement, Arlong. Robin looked at Awa, who was speaking in doubt. Didn't we kill a group of murlocs who occupied the island and oppressed the civilians in East Blue? I know this. Is it the dragon pirates? Well, that's them. Awa looked at Robin, a flash of memory flashed in his eyes. He could remember that it was the first time the 3 of them had the idea of becoming stronger. Think back then, and now. Yes, they are the same murlocs as the dragon pirates. Robin nodded and continued. It's just that Mr. Tom and the evil dragon are of different races. The evil dragon is a shark murloc, while Mr. Tom is a horned murloc. Then what does this have to do with the sea train? This ship conquered the Grand Line together with Roger, took him and his partners to the final island, and witnessed Roger becoming the pirate king, using the treasure tree, Adam, as wood to complete the Oro, Jackson. Everything, just keep it in your heart, but all thanks to Sorata. As if thinking of something, he said, more than 20 years ago, Gordy. Roger, please ask him to build a pirate ship. Without Sorata, they would not be where they are now, and they would not have seen so many interesting things and people. Adao unhurriedly withdrew his hand, took a deep puff of the cigarette, glanced down at Aluo and turned his head, with eyes burning with anger, spit out a puff of shredded tobacco, completely indifferent. As partners who grew up together, they entrusted their lives to each other from the moment they went to sea, so there is no need to say these things. But they wouldn't say thank you to Sorata. That's right, that's the one you want, brother One Piece, D. Roger. Time is like quicksand, drifting with the wind along the gap between fingers. A big slap was slapped on the back of Arlo's head. What's the hurry? I'll know when Robin-chan finishes speaking. Snapped. In the past few months, their changes have been earth-shaking. They never thought that they could be so strong. Before anyone could ask, Robin said it himself. Speaking of this, Robin paused slightly, looked up, looked at the few clouds above the sky, and his thoughts were drifting. Chapter 239. Why do you have to die? Robin glanced at Aluo and Adao, and smiled again on the corner of his mouth. She looked at the crowd, and then said, after Roger was executed, Mr. Tom was brought to the Eni's lobby for trial because he assisted One Piece in building the ship, but he explained the design and concept of the sea train to the presiding judge, which made the judge change his original intention. There is a trial, temporarily give him time to make it. If it weren't for the sea train, Mr. Tom would have gone with Roger many years ago. After 14 years, Mr. Tom put the sea train. Having said that, she turned her attention to the train in the distance again, that is, the Smoking Tom, in front of us has been laid on the track and passed the acceptance of the world government, and then the world government pronounced a sentence, Mr. Tom completed sea trains can be offset against the crime of building a ship for One Piece Roger. Since it's cancelled, Mr. Tom is still there now. Since it is here, why didn't it continue to build sea trains? Exist? Robin paused, and her gentle breath changed to slightly gloomy. She looked away and looked at everyone. Do you really think that the world government will let Mr. Tom, who helped build the ship for One Piece? Arlo, who was asking the question, was speechless, and he didn't know if he would, but judging by Robin's appearance, it was obviously not what he thought. I don't know exactly what happened. I only saw it in the newspaper. It was written that Mr. Tom attacked a government ship and was taken to Eni's hull to be executed. Assault on government ships. Mr. Tom is innocent. How could he attack a government ship? Everyone looked at Robin suspiciously, waiting for her answer. Don't look at me, I don't know what's going on. Robin shrugged, let out a breath, and continued. For such a bizarre reason, and there is no specific report, Mr. Tom, who has made outstanding contributions to the world, was executed by the world government. After Mr. Tom died, although the world government got the blueprint of the sea train, it did not continue to build the sea train in the capital of Seven Waters. As for whether there are other places, I don't know. Oh, seeing that Robin had no extra goods here, everyone withdrew their gazes, leaned on the railing, faced the wind, and began to appreciate the rare beauty. Although Mr. Tom was great, everyone admired him for building a sea train, but he was not a familiar person to everyone, so naturally he had no extra emotions about his death. At most he felt a little more regret. Advertisement: the weather on the Grand Line is like a chameleon. They just passed through a stormy area not long ago, so they cherish this rare calm sea. Since they have the permanent pointer of the capital of Seven Waters, they did not pass through Long Island, and they did not meet the Fox Pirates who stayed near Long Chain Island and collected pirate flags. The captain of Fox Pirates is a very interesting person. This guy is Paramecia Delay Fruit ability user, and slow fruit is one of the few devil fruits known to be related to time. It can emit slow light to slow down the movement of people or objects hit by the light. It's a pity that no matter how powerful the fruit is, if it is in the hands of the trash, it will become a trash fruit. The initial ability is so strong, then this fruit will be another god-level devil fruit in the hands of masters and those with pursuit and ambition. Although this guy is interesting, Sorata didn't deliberately change course for this guy. On the bow, on the windmill. Sorata sat there cross-legged, leaning lazily on the blades of the windmill, drinking wine while admiring the sea train in the distance. Others don't know whether the government has built other sea trains, but he knows. It's just that he didn't continue to cultivate in the capital of Seven Waters. The Seven Waters all want to have extra trains, and they have to wait for the smoking iceberg, built by Bingshan 4 years later. Well, it seems that there is also a special express train for the government. But that's for the government, if he remembers correctly. A similar sea train appeared in the Poseidon movie, Z, connecting Dock Island and Second Island. The rails are similar to the movie, Spirited Away. The rails are fixed in the sea, and the station located in the hot spring resort Second Island is larger. It is a large station with 3 terminal passenger platforms. Apparently world government is doing this to develop tourism. I just don't know if it was built for the entertainment of the nobles, or for the taxation of the hot spring resort Second Island. Advertisement: as for Tom's original intention, to save the capital of Seven Waters whose water level is increasing year by year due to the gods of water, this ideal. What about world government? In the final analysis, the capital of Seven Waters is just a shipbuilding island in the sea, where all kinds of ships can be built, not an island of the world government. As long as Tom is dead, don't they search Tom's residence as much as they want? Isn't it? And Bingshan is also a smart person. He knew that the world government would not give up, so after seeing his younger brother Frankie come back, he handed over the drawings to Frankie. The 7 companies listed above merge. What does that matter to them? That's why there have been sea trains for so many years, and as the first capital of Seven Waters, there is only one strange phenomenon in operation. But what the world government didn't expect was that after they killed Tom, they didn't find a hair. Not only did the new company, Correct, become the world's #1 shipyard, but he also cooperated with the world government to make Carrera the official shipbuilding company of the world government, making it impossible for world government officials to attack him. From here on, the world government will protect the capital of Seven Waters, open more routes, and build more sea trains. If Mr. Tom was still there, maybe this sea area would have been covered with tracks long ago, and the whine of the train resounded through the sea, so you can go wherever you want. No one would have thought that Tom knew the urine of the world government long ago, and 3 days before the delivery of the sea train in the trial, he gave the design drawings of Pluton to his apprentice Bingshan. It's a pity that if there is no if, who told Mr. Tom to build a ship for one piece. They will not build a sea train for the capital of Seven Waters. Otherwise, with the hugeness of the world government, it would be impossible for the person who invented such a great work as the sea train to carefully design traps and let him die. This is why the world government must have him dead. Let him die, on the one hand, to prevent Tom from actually creating Pluton one day. Although this is just a guess, for the world government, as long as there is such a sign, they have a reason to kill the sign, and will not wait for the guess to become a fact. When something really bad happens, it will be too late. In fact, it's okay to build a ship, but who told him to use Pluton's technology to build a ship? On the other hand, of course the world government wants the blueprints for Pluton. It's no good for them. Chapter 240: The Station Above the Sea. But that's all for later. Bingshan has only been building ships for the world government for a little over 2 years now, and he doesn't know if the train tracks to other islands have been opened. He remembered that 2 years later, although the sea train could sail to other tourist islands around here, such as the Gourmet City, Buzzier, as well as the Spring Queen capital, Street Poplar, and the Carnival Town, St. Felt, wait, but there is still only one smoking Tom on the train, and there is no increase. I don't know if the world government doesn't want to build it, or what. These are all about sea trains, but even if Bingshan joins the world government with a shipyard and builds ships specifically for the world government, it is impossible to stop the world government and the CP organization from getting the Pluton design. On the surface, because of Tom's death, the world government no longer had any trouble finding the capital of Seven Waters, but in order to obtain the design of Pluton, they had already dispatched a team of CP9 members to sneak into the Carrera Company in Iceberg. And because these CP9 members are not comparable to ordinary people at all, they sat on the top of Carrera Company early in the morning. There is even a secretary who is an iceberg. Fortunately, this guy Bingshan is smart. He knows that he is the person on the bright side, and the world government will not give up, so he will definitely stare at him, so he is not at ease when he joins the world government, so he handed over the blueprint a long time ago, hiding in the dark, in the hands of Frankie, a gangster in the capital of Seven Waters. Otherwise, with CP9's professionalism, how could he not be able to find it after so many years? These guys have been looking for so long, and they don't know how to change their targets, and they don't know what they're thinking. Based on their information, it is impossible not to know that Frankie is Bingshan's junior Carter Flam. It's also possible that they really don't know, because Frankie hasn't appeared since he was injured. It wasn't until 4 years after Tom's incident that Frankie met his brother Bingshan in the form of a transformed human. It was at this time that Bingshan handed over the Pluton design drawings to Frankie. And because Frankie loves the capital of Seven Waters, he did not follow the advice of his brother Bingshan to leave the capital of Seven Waters. Instead, he abandoned his real name and used the name, Frankie, to take in many homeless people who almost starved to death in the back streets, opened the Frankie family, with shipbreaking as a profession. The profession is a disintegrator and the sideline is a bounty hunter. By fighting pirates to atone for sins, protect Tom's favorite water capital. Of course, most of the time, people on the island regard them as gangsters and are afraid of them. Why did this guy look vicious, go out in only a pair of underpants and always do some pervert things? After a while, the Liberty met the Smoky Tom, adjusted its course, followed the Smoky Tom, and headed for the capital of Seven Waters. There are many people on the train. Through the window, you can see that the inside is full of people, and there is no room at all. These people are all from other islands, going to the capital of Seven Waters to do business. After all, if you want to play, you can go to other islands around here. You must know that other islands are tourist islands. It seems that Bingshan's efforts for so many years have paid off. Advertisement turning his head to look at the people wearing various styles of clothes in the train carriage, the corners of Sorata's mouth turned up with a smile. Although no new sea trains have been built, at least the world government has allowed the opening of multiple routes, which has brought a large number of orders and prosperity to the capital of Seven Waters. Of course, the return of the sea train to the surrounding islands will also bring more tourists to the surrounding islands. Generally speaking, the transportation is convenient, and the business will naturally be good. When the island is prosperous, people's living standards will naturally improve, and their sense of happiness will also increase. I have to say that Tom really deserves the title of greatness. With the sea train, ordinary people can go to sea safely at any time and go to other islands. You must know that before there is no sea train, it is necessary to take great risks to sail across routes. Not only do you need a strong ship, but you also need a good navigator. Because this sea is not comparable to the four seas, it is swallowing up ships sailing on it anytime and anywhere. And under the deep sea, after countless years, the sunken ship may have circled the planet several times. So every time you go out to sea, it is actually a life and death test. If you have no strength, whether you can come back after going out, luck has to account for 90% of the ratio. The safety of sea trains is not comparable to that of ships. This giant steel beast sails on the sea. Even if it encounters storms and huge waves, it can easily cross and break through. In this way, as long as railway tracks are laid and trains pass between islands, the islands will no longer be isolated islands in the sea. Okay. There was a sudden commotion in the train carriage, which interrupted Sorata's wild thoughts and caught his eye. Seeing Sorata look at them again, it made the car even more chaotic. Obviously, many of them have already recognized Sorata and others who became famous again a day ago. Ha ha. Seeing that these people were interesting, Sorata couldn't help but grin at the carriage, showing her white teeth, and laughed out loud. It was fine if he didn't smile, but when he smiled, it immediately caused even greater confusion and screams. Sorata. Okay. Sorata put away her laughter and turned her head, tilted her body, her head protruded from the blades of the windmill, her eyes fell on Aluo who was standing at the bow, and she asked in confusion, "What's wrong?" "There seems to be a lighthouse ahead." Arlo put down the binoculars, smiled at Sorata and said, "It looks like it's a transit station for this train." Advertisement, oh. Sorata stroked her chin and thought for a while, then her eyes lit up. The front should be Water 7, Sifter Station. He remembered that the scene of the first sea train appeared in the original book as here. He thought they had missed it, but it turned out that they were behind the shift station. He remembered that the station master here was also a mermaid, a kind-hearted mermaid mother-in-law who looked like a monster. As for the name, it should be called Kokora. It seems that there is also a granddaughter. As for the name of her granddaughter, he forgot. There is also a cat, which is actually a rabbit, and can make a meow sound. For a long distance, the railings of the railway station have been opened. There was no one on the platform, so the train didn't stop. With a whining sound, it rushed straight through the archway in the middle of the station and headed into the distance. If the train didn't stop, the Liberty naturally didn't stop either. Although Kay Kellogg is a very interesting person, there is no need for them to stop because of her. After all, they don't need to get any news from Kay Kellogg, and they don't need her to introduce Bingshan. They went to the capital of Seven Waters because their record pointer finally pointed to that. Next, they will rest and play in the capital of Seven Waters for 7 days. If he remembered correctly, it would take 7 days for the magnetic force of the capital of Seven Waters to be fully stored. 7 days is enough time for the world government to organize their forces again and round them up, but they don't know if they dare or not. Ha ha. There are also pirates in this sea area, who often go to the capital of Seven Waters to repair ships, but they don't know if they dare to trouble them. Think about it, after all, in this sea, there is never a shortage of people who don't know how to live or die. And as long as they take the lead and know their whereabouts, then they will face the challenge of countless people next. Chapter 241 CP97 Water Capital, also known as Water 7, Water Capital. This is the largest and most prosperous shipbuilding island in the world at this time. The whole island is like a water park, and the houses on the island are stepped and spread upwards. In the center of the island, there is a huge fountain, and the water flowing from the fountain is divided into many channels, flowing through the town and heading to the sea. The island is surrounded by high walls to prevent the annual tsunami, gods of water. Under the wall, there are ruins of a town. It used to be part of the island, but due to the rising water level due to unknown reasons, the houses here have been completely abandoned by the residents of the island. While moving to a higher place to live, it has also turned this place into a desolate ruin. And some abandoned ships will also be discarded on the edge of this island. Frankie's residence, as well as his ship dismantling base, Frank's house, are built on a beach facing the sea behind the island. Through a long staircase, everyone stood on the streets of the capital of Seven Waters. It's so lively, yes, it's been a long time since I saw such a lively scene. The last time I saw such a lively scene was when I was at Clock Island. Robin brushed the hair that floated in front of his eyes, looked at the street ahead, with a gentle smile on the corner of his mouth. This is the second half of the paradise. There are not only many tourist islands around here, but also the special court of the world government, the Eni's lobby. So ordinary pirates don't dare to mess around here at all, and with the opening of the Shanghai train, more people come here, making this place more prosperous. Oh, everyone nodded. With Robin can answer many of their questions. He is indeed the person with the most books and the most knowledge on board. In this regard, even Indigo, who is older than Robin, is willing to bow down. Don't look at him messing around with the world's top pirate Golden Lion early in the morning, but in terms of knowledge, apart from medicine, there are many levels worse than Robin. The level is higher than Ahua and others, even Sorata is not as good. In terms of knowledge alone, it is impossible for Robin to be comparable to Sorata, it's just that everyone doesn't know it. Kuina vaguely knew, but she never said it. Okay, let's go in. Sorata took the first step, holding Kuina's hand with his left hand and pocketing it with his right hand. Walked into the street full of people. Advertisement. Carrera Shipbuilding Company's #1 dock, a shaded area covered by wood. Lu Chi, according to the news from Bluno, the silver-haired group has landed on the island and stayed in a hotel in the city. The person who spoke was a square-nosed man wearing an orange and blue coat and a white baseball cap on his head. Opposite him stood a man in a blue boatman's uniform with long black wavy hair tied into a low ponytail behind him. On the man's shoulder stood a white pigeon that was similar to what he was wearing. For these two people, the person who spoke was Kaku, a member of CP9. As for the one opposite him, it was Rob Lucci, the captain of CP9. This guy claims to be the strongest player in CP9 inches for 800 years, but I don't know if it's true. The pigeon on his shoulder is his pet and his partner, named Hadoli. This is a white pigeon, which has been by Lucci's side since childhood, standing on his shoulders, and will cooperate with him in performing ventriloquism. And depending on Lucci's clothes, he will wear the same style of clothes as him. Lucci didn't speak, but Hadori on his shoulder spoke. The silver-haired guy, okay, Kaku nodded. Should we report it? Although the silver-haired gang has nothing to do with us, the world government ordered some time ago that after seeing the silver-haired gang, we must report it as soon as possible. Obviously, the world government has done a good job of keeping secrets. Whether it's CP0 or Marine, only a few high-level people know about the battle on Lantern Island. They hadn't even retracted this special order from Cartlays yet. I don't know if I don't know, or I don't care about the life and death of the bottom people at all. No, these CP9 members who have been hiding in the capital of Seven Waters don't know the specifics. Lucci narrowed his eyes slightly, thought for a while, and then Hadorly spoke. Report it. I heard that Nico Robin, the son of the devil, boarded the boat of the silver-haired gang. She is the one that the world government is focusing on. Shaking his head, the pigeon continued to speak. But these have nothing to do with us, we just upload information routinely. Others don't know how scary the silver-haired gang is, but they do. No matter how confident he is, he will not be stupid enough to think that he can stand shoulder to shoulder with silver hair at this time. Advertisement not to mention him, even if their whole team went, they would basically never return. Well, also, tell Bluno not to follow too closely, and don't show your flaws to be discovered by silver hair and others. Do not worry. Kaku opened his mouth and smiled slightly. Don't you know Bluno yet? With his usual appearance, no one would think he is a threat. Okay. Lucci nodded. It is because Bluno's appearance and character are very deceptive, plus his fruit ability, so he will stay outside to collect information. Hey, so you are here. At this moment, a man wearing goggles and a blue crew uniform stood outside the woodpile, blocking the sun's light, making Kaku and Lucci in the shadows even darker. Up. The person who came was called Barry, and he was one of the 5 foremen of the Carrera shipyard, #1 dock. And Kaku and Lucci are also one of the 5 foremen. Barry's blonde hair, drenched with sweat, glistened in the sun. And with a cigar in his mouth, he was staring at Rocky and Kaku with dissatisfaction while he was puffing. Really, looking for you everywhere, follow me quickly, a big order is coming. As he said that, he went forward to Lukaku and Lucci. The moment Lucci and the two saw Barry, their aura instantly changed and became milder. Opened Barry's reaching hand. Kaku took a step forward, put his right hand on his shoulder, and said with a smile. It's a hot day, we just come here to cool off. As he spoke, he pulled Barry out and asked as he walked, a new order has come, or a big order, tell me how big it is. How big? Barry opened his mouth and let out a puff of smoke, tilted his head and smiled at Kaku. I don't know, I know it's a big order, and Mr. Bingshan is calling us for a meeting. It can't be too small. Mr. Iceberg? Then you have to go faster? Lucci looked at Barry's back, and a cold murderous intent appeared in the depths of his eyes, but then quickly disappeared. They have been here as undercover agents for more than 3 years, but they have not found a single clue of Pluton's drawings. Shaking his head, he also stepped out of the shadow. Chapter 242 Hush Midnight. The moon is dark and the wind is high. At a shoal outside the capital of Seven Waters, several warships docked silently. The loud sound of the waves hitting the coast hides the sound of the warship, and also hides the sound of countless marines on the warship. Lucci and the others know the gap with the silver-haired gang, but his boss, Spandam, doesn't know. This guy is an officer second generation who relied on his father's achievements to sit on the top position of CP9. He doesn't have much strength, but he is very arrogant, and has a very despicable personality and a sinister heart. Even his subordinates, all members of CP9 hate this guy very much. After boarding the ship and docking, a man in a black military uniform, with short purple hair, a mask covering half of his face, and a long knife hanging from his waist, led two strange men, one fat and one thin, and stepped off the warship first. This guy is Spandam. As soon as he received Bluno's call, he didn't choose to report it upwards, but took the marine warship stationed at Eni's lobby and quickly came to the capital of Seven Waters. He doesn't care about the silver-haired gang, but Nico Robin, this is an important bounty that the world government has been looking for many years. If he could get Robin back, it would be another feat. As for whether he can catch it, he doesn't think about it. He brought soldiers from several warships, and there were CP9 and Lucci on the island. He doesn't trust so many people, and he still can't catch a Nico Robin. Pirates. Whoever sees the warship must not hide. Although the silver-haired group is very strong, but he has never seen it before, and his own strength is only that, how can he tell how strong the strong are? Sure. There was only one man in a black suit with two suspected horns on his head. The man stared at the warship on the sea, his whole body straightened, his face full of seriousness. He is the owner of the Water City Central Street Hotel. Of course, his real identity is a member of CP9, a door-to-door fruit-capable person who can open doors anywhere, including walls and air. He was the one who discovered the silver-haired group during the day and reported it to Kaku, and then got Lucci's order to report it to Spandam. It never occurred to him that Spandam would be stupid enough to bring someone to catch Robin. It doesn't matter if Robin is in any pirate group in the Paradise, but at this time, Robin is on the silver-haired ship with a reward of 2.5 billion berry. 2.5 billion. What probability? Advertisement: there are countless pirates in this world, and only the 4 emperors of New World can surpass this bounty. In other words, the silver hair at this time has already risen to the 5th place in the world in the heart of the world government. Although the bounty does not represent strength, especially the first half of the Grand Line. But no matter what, it's impossible for the silver-haired person to be brought by Spandam, and CP9 can deal with them. Whizzing. There was a sound of breaking wind, and 2 figures in black suits suddenly appeared beside him, one on the left and the other on the right. Taking a closer look, it was Lucci and Kaku who came. They were both asleep, but suddenly they received an emergency call from Bluno, and they hurried over. They didn't even notify Khalifa because of the urgency of the situation. He glanced at Lucci and Kaku. Brooke whispered, Lucci, what should we do? On the surface, the chief of CP9 is Spandam, but in the hearts of the players, only Lucci is their real leader. Of course, they are also their partners, because they grew up together. How to do? At this time, Lucci was wearing a black suit and a black top hat, and he looked very indifferent. He stared at Spandam, a gleam of anger in his eyes. He hated this officer very much. Doesn't this guy know that such nonsense might expose them, and even catch them all by silver hair? But he knew Spandam's character very well, and he knew that he couldn't persuade this guy. So he doesn't know what to do. Hey, are you all here? Snapped. With both feet on the rocks on the shore, Spandam stepped forward quickly, his eyes swept over the 3 of Lucci, with a satisfied smile on his face. Except that Khalifa didn't come, this time our CP9 is fully dispatched, and we must catch Nico Robin. Spandam laughed loudly, and walked forward quickly, towards the distant stairs. Walk. The 2 weirdos following Spandam glanced at Lucci, then shook their heads, passed by them, and quickly followed. Apparently, they've talked Spandam out. Lucci frowned slightly, turned to look at the countless marines who got off the warship, turned around, and followed the pace of Spandam. Advertisement who said that the current chief executive of CP9 is Spandam. No matter how stupid this guy is, they have to obey him. They can only take one step at a time, and if they really can't do anything, they still have Bluno's door fruit to escape. Wind. Since Spandam landed on the island, it seems that the wind has also increased. Blowing the clouds in the sky gradually covered the cold moonlight, and completely plunged the capital of Seven Waters into darkness. The darkness has a very good concealment effect. So Spandam and the others, even though there were a little too many people, did not cause any movement under the careful march. And when they walked to a remote two-story building hotel, the crowd gradually dispersed and surrounded the hotel. Before they could attack, they suddenly seemed to hear a mocking laughter resounding through their souls. Marine, World Government, CP9. Silently, a boy appeared on the eaves of the hotel roof. And the Marines behind them were all frozen in place, as if they had been immobilized. Spandam stared at Sorata, who suddenly appeared, without any fear in his eyes, then took a step forward, and opened his mouth to yell loudly. But, with his head down, his blue pupils stared down without any emotion. Sorata, who was still on the roof just now, appeared in front of him silently at an unknown time, staring at him with eyes that were shining with blue light. Hush! Only the idiot Spandam, as if he didn't find anything, took a step forward and wanted to yell loudly. In the middle of the night, it's not good to wake up other people's dreams. The breath was like Shinigami's sickle, giving them the feeling that as long as they dared to move, they would die tragically on the spot the next moment. Unexpectedly, it wasn't the pirates who came to trouble me first, but you CP9s. From the moment Sorata appeared, Lu Chi and the others following Spandam were locked by an inexplicable aura. The boy with silver hair and wearing a white nightgown was sitting lazily on the eaves of the roof. Do you want to die that much? He reached out and patted Spandam on the shoulder, tilting his head to look at him. Are you right? There was no momentum, nor any unnecessary movements, but it made Spandam's body freeze in place, and he could no longer speak the following words. How? Chapter 243. Doorfruit die. Spandam saw death, not someone else's, but his own. He wanted to escape and scream, but the fear in his heart was like an abyss, pulling his soul, preventing him from making a sound, not even trembling. And the source of all that was the guy who suddenly appeared in front of him. You can't kill me, you can't kill me. I am the supreme officer of CP9 of the world government. If you kill me, you will become an enemy of the whole world, and there will be no place for you and your partners in this world in the future. This was the cry from the bottom of his heart, but it couldn't be heard. He regretted his decision to trouble the silver-haired gang. Why didn't I listen to CP9's opinion? Why did I get fooled by Lard? I want to come to the capital of Seven Waters. At this moment, Spandam felt that there was an inexplicable energy in his body. A small black dot, which was falling from the silver-haired hand on his shoulder, landed on him, and finally landed in his heart. Then his whole body seemed to be ignited by fire. His whole body was instantly crushed by this force. Ultimate's pain made him open his mouth wide and his eyes protrude. He wanted to roar loudly and vent his pain, but he couldn't do it. At this moment, he seemed to have fallen into a real hell, suffering from the pain of being smashed all over. Woo! The wind blows. Spandam was silent, turned into dust in an instant, and slowly dissipated with the wind. Sorata didn't give him too much pain. If you don't look at the face that is so distorted that you can't see it at all. There really wasn't much pain, and he died peacefully. Looking at Spandam, who was still a big living person just now, was slapped by the silver hair, and turned into dust in an instant, and was drifting away with the wind. The pupils of Lu Chi and the others contracted to the extreme. Fear instantly filled their souls. They knew the horror of silver hair in advance, but they never thought it would be so scary. Is this the strength to fight Admiral and cut 4 vice admirals with one blow? This is too scary. Before they came, they thought that even if they couldn't beat them, they could escape with Bluno's fruit ability, but this is the situation now. Escape? How to escape? Unless someone can hold silver hair in check for a moment, there's no way they can escape. Well, you are the captain of CP9, Rob Lucci. Putting down his hand, Sorata's eyes fell on Lucci, and a trace of curiosity flashed in his eyes. Advertisement: this guy is just like the guys from CP0, he is completely a killing machine cultivated by the world government. If he hadn't mastered hockey, he should have been promoted to CP0 long ago. Lucci and the others stared at Sorata, but did not reply. The oppressive force acting on the soul made them feel as if they had just come up from the sea, and their bodies were soaked in sweat. I can't wait any longer, I really can't leave if I wait any longer. Lucci frowned, ignoring the sweat streaming down his eyelids. A murderous intent emerged deep in his eyes. He knew that if there was really one person here to contain Sorata, it was only him, and it could only be him. Who told him to be the captain of CP9, and also the strongest one? Escape is definitely impossible to escape. Not to mention him, I am afraid no one in this world can escape from this guy in front of him. We can only place our hope on Bluno, without hesitation. If they wait any longer, the gradually increasing oppression will make them unable to move anymore. The body sank, the legs were slightly bent, and the whole person suddenly looked like a leopard hunting, kicked on the ground, and rushed towards Sorata quickly. The moment he rushed out, the other CP9 members around him moved in tacit understanding. The crowd quickly gathered towards Bluno. Know the specialness of things and the urgency of time. Didn't Bluno do too much useless work? He quickly stretched out his hands and pulled them in the void in front of him. Creak. The door opened. In this silent night, the slightly harsh sound of opening the door resounded throughout the space. Without even looking at Lucci, who was rushing towards him, Sorata tilted his head to avoid Lucci's fist, and his eyes fell on Bluno. Door fruit. He almost forgot about this god-level fruit on this guy. The door can be opened anywhere, including in the air. I just don't know if the world behind the door is teleportation, or if I have to go to other places and then open the door. He had long forgotten about this, so he didn't know. Whether it is teleportation or walking, this fruit is worthy of the title of God-level fruit. The two forces are at war, and this fruit is very powerful no matter whether it is an attack or a sneak attack or a retreat. Turning his head, his blue pupils stared at Lu Qi again. This guy's speed is very fast, especially with the shaving technique, but in front of him, Lu Qi is proud of his speed and strength, just like a primary school student, weak and powerless. Raising his right hand, the back hair first blocked the right side of his head. With a bang, he received Lu Qi's full punch, and before he could react, he turned his hand and grabbed Lu Qi's fist. Then flicked down. Advertisement just like shaking noodles. Click. The sound of bones breaking. Then Lu Qi's body, as if being punched from top to bottom, arched his body, and smashed into the ground with a bang. Just as the smoke and dust were about to rise and the sound was about to spread, the first floor of space isolated the space, preventing the sound from being transmitted and affecting the sleep of the surrounding people. Pressure. Extreme pressure. It is no longer the mental and soul pressure, but the pressure acting on the body in reality, filling the entire space in an instant, preventing the dust splashed by Lu Qi's body collision from flying into the air. It also pressed Lu Qi's body deeply into the ground, preventing him from getting up. Lu Qi. Everyone looked at Lu Qi, whose body and arms were twisted irregularly like a dead fish, and couldn't help shouting. Their voices are loud, but again, they cannot be heard in this space. Well, why are you so eager to seek death? Although I won't let you go, you can live a little longer, can't you? Sorata let go of his right hand, and the pressure disappeared, allowing Lu Qi's body to slide down like ooze, falling into the ruins that his body had just been smashed out of, with a bang, splashing faint dust. Vomit. As long as he entered the door, even if this terrifying guy had great abilities, he would never be able to hurt him again. Did not get up. With a sound of whoosh, Lu Qi's figure rushed into the door. Sorata stood where she was, and did not stop Bluno and others from entering the door, nor did she stop Lu Qi. Then everyone in CP9 seemed to have suddenly lost all their strength, their backs leaned against the wall of the space, their legs softened, they slid down to the ground, and then gasped for breath. Of course, there is no way to find them. That grasping and flinging force was simply not something he could resist. Boom, the guy in front of him is not human at all, but a real monster. He was also curious what was the space behind Bluno's door. Even if he had suffered a more serious injury than now, he had never been so desperate at this moment. Putting his left hand on the ground, he struggled to get up slowly. The moment his body arched, he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. The partners have already entered the door, waiting for him. The bones in his right hand and many bones in his body were broken. At this time, he felt as if his body was falling apart. He knew he couldn't fight Sorata, so the moment he stood up, he kicked his feet on the ground, gritted his teeth, and rushed towards the door. Bluno opened like a bullet. Then Bluno, who was waiting behind the door, quickly closed the door. The blood fell on the ground, and under the faint moonlight, it shone with a cold and ending light, as if his life at this moment was about to end. Opening his mouth, a mouthful of bright red blood sprayed out of Lu Qi's mouth like a water arrow. Chapter 244 Clean up. I don't want to see any bloodline on the street tomorrow morning. This guy is too scary. Kaku patted his chest with lingering fear, his pale face was full of survivors. Then he stood up, walked to Lu Qi, looked down at his twisted arms and collapsed chest, and said with concern, "Are you all right, Lu Qi?" "Fine." Lu Qi raised his head, let out a breath, then swallowed a mouthful of bloody saliva, and said, "This guy is the scariest person I've ever seen in my life." Having said that, he paused for a moment, with doubts in his eyes. With his strength and teleportation ability, it should be impossible for us to leave, and I don't know why. I always feel that this guy deliberately led us the same door we entered. Bluno. "Don't worry, Lu Qi." At this time, other CP9 members also came over. Bluno glanced at the surrounding space, and then proudly said, "Whether he did it on purpose or not. As long as we are in this back world, no one in this world will be able to find us." Okay, everyone nodded, they agreed with this point. After listening to Bluno's words, Lu Qi gradually let go of the worries in his heart, but there is always a vague danger in his heart, reminding him that this place is not safe. So he stretched out his hand, grabbed Kaku's shoulder, then stood up slowly, raised his head and glanced at the street above the sky, as if the sky and the earth were falling, and the silver-haired figure on the street, then retracted his gaze, looked to the front, "Hurry up and go. I always feel in my heart that something bad is going to happen." Okay. Everyone didn't say much. Kaku supported Lu Qi and walked forward one step ahead, and the others quickly followed. Outside world. Interesting, interesting. Sorata stared at the place where Bluno disappeared, as if she found something interesting. Eyes sparkle with discovery of new things. He found that behind the door that this guy opened above the void was another void, an incomparably huge void. There is nothing in that void, but there is oxygen needed by life. This situation reminded him of a parallel world. The world behind that door might be another parallel world. The parallel world here is not a world where the world develops in two directions. Rather, that world is an empty template of the outside world. Advertisement: one body with two sides. This world is getting more and more interesting. Ha 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 ha. Sorata withdrew her gaze, and habitually touched her waist with her left hand. Okay. The laughter stopped abruptly, and he realized that he didn't bring a wine gourd when he came out. Shaking his head, retracting his hand, he smiled awkwardly. Alcohol addiction is coming, hurry up and get rid of these guys, go back to the bar. Sorata raised his head, and his eyes fell on a person who was obviously a Marine general after they left CP9. Marine, I remember I told Sengoku that if Marine comes to trouble me in the future, I won't let go, you. Why do you have such a short memory? As he spoke, his eyes were fixed, staring at the Marine general, and there was a murderous intent in his blue pupils. General Marine suddenly found that the pressure on his soul had disappeared. He quickly suppressed the fear in his heart, took a deep breath, did not beg for mercy, and did not say anything unnecessary. Instead, he raised his head and stared at him firmly. Sorata. Spandam is his boss, even if he doesn't want to, it is impossible to violate the military order. All we can do now is to stand upright, not to shame Marine and the justice behind him. As for the rest, he didn't want to think about it. Remarkably brave. Sorata stared at the Marine general, a red light appeared in his eyes, and his knowledge swept across the area and all the Marines in an instant. Then the red light in his eyes disappeared, gradually revealing a cold murderous intent. Suddenly, more than half of Marine was instantly pushed into the ground by an inexplicable pressure. There were no screams, only the popping sound like a water polo bursting. However, even the crackling sound was confined to a small area and could not be transmitted. In a short while, the blood quickly dyed the street red, and then the bloody smell of ultimate, with the wind, drifted in this space, like lovers in love, entwined around the noses of everyone, and did not dissipate for a long time. Gradually strong. The rest of the Marines, looking at their companions who had just recovered, were suddenly crushed to the ground by an inexplicable force, and then crushed directly, all trembling, their faces pale, and the ultimate fear exuded from their bodies. This hellish scene gave them a psychological impact they had never had before. I'm afraid they will never forget in this lifetime, the silver-white figure standing at the door of the hotel in this dark night. It was a demon, a real demon. Sweep up, I don't want to see any bloodlines on the street tomorrow morning. Advertisement taking back the space domain. Sorata took one last look at the Marine general again. Keep your voice down, don't wake up the people around you, especially my companion. After speaking, he raised his foot and took a step forward. Boom. It was this step that made his body feel as if he had stepped out of this world. Half of his body disappeared while the other half was still outside, while the space in front of him was filled with space ripples. V=_= as he lifted his other leg and stepped into the ripples of space, the entire figure disappeared completely, as if it had never been here before. There are mods in Marine, he knows, so every time he sees Marine, he will use his knowledge to identify it. The ones I met a few times ago were basically considered to be justice. So he let it all go. And now, among those who follow Spandam, there are obviously a lot of mods. This also caused him to kill Marine on a large scale for the first time. But this kind of thing is inevitable, if you kill it, you will kill it. Who told these guys to follow the wrong officer and come to him? Seeing that the terrifying big devil really left. The remaining Marines around quickly bent down, put their hands on their knees, gasping for breath like a drowning fish. The Marine general also breathed a sigh of relief. He turned his head and looked at the dead Marine soldiers around him, with a hint of doubt in his eyes. Why didn't this guy kill them all? Could it be that he really just left them sweeping the floor? Then, as if thinking of something, his eyes lit up. He thought, he knew why these Marines died. As his subordinates, and at the same time as Spandam's subordinates, even if he usually doesn't know what his subordinates are doing, he can still feel them doing evil. And Marine, who just died, is the guy who usually listens to Spandam the most. Colonel, what shall we do next? At this moment, a Marine soldier behind him stepped forward and asked him for instructions with a pale face. How to do? The colonel turned his head and glanced at the remaining Marines, and his eyes fell on the Marine who asked him, let's report the matter here first. The affairs of the silver-haired gang are beyond our control. As for here. Having said that, he paused slightly, looked down at the corpses on the ground, and said in a heavy tone, pick up the corpses of your colleagues and bring them back to the warship, and then clean up the streets. It was obviously impossible for the corpses of his colleagues to stay here. As for cleaning the ground, he thought about it for a while. It would be better to clean it. Otherwise, if that horrible guy comes back, none of them will be able to leave. Chapter 245 The Strange Door. The world behind the door. Lu Qi and the others had already left for a while. Seeing that there were no accidents, Lu Qi's fast-beating heart gradually calmed down. Phew, it seems I'm thinking too much. His tense mood gradually relaxed, and his usual indifference returned to his face. At this moment, he found that the surroundings suddenly became quiet and his companions and Kaku, who was supporting him, all stopped. Trembling, through his arms, he could feel Kaku's violently trembling body. As if thinking of something, horror and, of course, fear appeared on his indifferent face. Lift your head up slowly, slowly. Really? That terrifying figure that couldn't be wiped away unexpectedly stopped in front of them at some point. The visitor didn't have any momentum, but the familiar sense of oppression instantly acted on the depths of his soul, making his eye sockets wide open, and the pupils shrank inwards into a point. Sorata saw and sensed it, and left a space node. As long as there is a space node, of course he can come in. In other people's eyes, space is invisible and intangible, but in his eyes, it is something that can be touched and felt. The moment Bluno opened the door, his perception passed through Bluno's door and spread into the world behind the door. So afterwards, even if the guy closed the door, it couldn't stop him from coming in. It's strange to say that if this guy doesn't open the door, he can't feel the existence of this space, but after this guy opens the door, this space seems to come to this world suddenly. No, it's also possible that this space is already there and can only be entered through Bluno's door. And he couldn't sense it before, it should be because he didn't have coordinates. In his mind, this may be caused by the different dimensions of space. He usually senses, and can only sense space on a plane. The world behind the Bluno door is formed on the basis of the real world by reducing dimensions. Using 3 dimensions to describe the real world, the world behind the door is 2.5 dimensional. It was from top to bottom, so of course he couldn't sense it. But as long as he takes a look at him, with the probability of this space and the coordinates to enter here, he can appear in this world across the dimension of space. Otherwise, he wouldn't have let these guys in so easily. He won't let go of the villains, even the villains who come to trouble him. Looking at the surrounding space like transparent glass. A hint of curiosity flashed in Sorata's eyes. Here, the left, right and the bottom are all the same. People in this space are as if they are really standing in the void. Only the top. Looking up, looking at the familiar street above as if looking at the reflection in the water, his eyes revealed enlightenment. Sure enough, this is the projection of the real world, attached to the real world, and built between illusion and reality through the inexplicable fruitability, not space travel. Advertisement, I saw it, I felt it, I felt it. He lowered his head and looked at the trembling and guarded CP9 people who were looking at him. The corners of his mouth were curved upwards, and a cruel smile appeared on his face. Stretch out your hand and clap down. Silver, just as Lu Chi was about to speak, he was bent over by a sudden pressure, and the words that came to his throat were swallowed back into his stomach with the impact of the top of his head. Boom, the shocking sound of slapping resounded through the space. Next, click, the sound of shattering mirrors kept ringing. Irregular cracks like centipedes spread outward from the place where it was struck, filling the entire space in the blink of an eye. The space vibrates, with Sorata as the center, everything around it seems like time stops, and the space that spreads rapidly, as if it will shatter in the next moment, stops in an instant. Taking a step forward, Sorata's figure instantly appeared above Bluno's dead flesh. With indifferent eyes, he felt a special ability rising from this guy's body. For him who has felt this energy many times, of course he knows what it is. With the appearance of energy, except for his surroundings, the outside space instantly collapsed. In the space storm, darkness invaded, and even in the darkness, he felt a dangerous breath coming quickly. As if feeling something, Sorata raised his head abruptly, and the nebula in his pupils flowed rapidly. Door? In his sight, he seemed to see a door in the darkness, a door made of huge skeletons, who was about to break through the darkness and come towards this side quickly. But it was as if this space was very close to Tianya. No matter how the door accelerated, the distance between them did not shorten at all. At this time, bang, wind. A wind so cold as to be ultimate. The moment the door was opened, it crossed time and space in an instant, appeared in this space, and then blew towards Sorata's domain. Rustle. The wind was blowing outside of Sorata's domain, like sand, actually slowly wetting the space of his domain. However, it is clear that Sorata's domain space is different from the outside space. No matter how the wind blows or gets wet, it cannot move forward. Bang. As if sensing the situation here, the door opened again. Danger. Sorata, who hadn't sensed the danger before, looked into the depths of the darkness with startled eyes at this moment. He felt that something very dangerous was about to come out from behind the door. Feeling the energy rising from Bluno's body, he couldn't find an exit, but had to rush into his wide-open dimensional bag, after attaching a fruit in his pocket. He closed the dimension bag, and took another last look at the distant door. Without hesitation, he turned around and took a step forward. The figure disappeared into this space. The moment Sorata's figure disappeared, the cold wind outside instantly blew through the space where he was standing just now, instantly turning the surrounding space into darkness. Advertisement bang. The door in the distance opened again, and next to the door, 5 pitch black, blood-red nails that shone coldly even in the dark protruded out of the door, and then grabbed the door frame. Bang bang bang. From the inside of the door came the deep sound of a heavy object hitting the door. At this moment, it seemed that it sensed the disappearance of Sorata, and the sound of slamming the door also disappeared, but from the crack of the door, there was a loud roar that resounded through the entire space and only the soul could perceive. The voice was deep and hoarse, full of evil, just like the voice of a demon in hell. Then, bang. The wind disappeared, the nails disappeared, and the roar stopped abruptly. The door also disappeared with the darkness. Along with the door, the dismembered corpses of CP9 and the others disappeared in the void. This space has returned to the eternal silence, as if everything that happened here was an illusion. Outside world. Ripples in space. Sorata stepped out of the void in one step, stepped on the roof of the hotel, and looked behind her. The horror that had not dissipated remained in her eyes. The moment he turned around, through the crack in the door, he seemed to see a real demon, only the blood-red eyes, but the madness and evil revealed in those eyes. Even if he came out, he still had lingering fear. Why does the more I explore this world, the more I feel that this world is dangerous? Glancing at Marine, who was carefully sweeping the streets, he chuckled and disappeared in place. Damn it. He didn't know where the door was. Shaking his head, he stopped thinking about it. The space behind the door fruit is completely dark without the power of the door fruit, and he could only be in darkness in the past. This time, although he was not in mortal danger, if that door really existed, then the outside of this world might not be peaceful. When you really stand on the top of the world in the future, go there and explore. It wasn't that the unknown thing at the end didn't give him a sense of danger, but that he was behind the door just now, and he seemed to feel more and stronger, guys. After taking a deep look behind him, a cold light flashed in his eyes. A real parallel world? It should at least be a world at the same latitude as the real world. But his black hole energy can break the space barriers on both sides, allowing him to go directly behind the weird door across time and space. After all, he already knew the space coordinates, and the conventional method should not make it through. He does not know. Although these things exist, they are too far away from reality and do not pose any threat to reality. It was only before that he saw an existence that he could not imagine. However, judging from the sense of reality of the door, the world behind the door is obviously impossible to be comparable to the world behind the door built by the fruit of the Bluno door and attached to reality.